Tell your friends you're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon,
And I'm Nathan.
and we now have another very special episode. We have the 1995 movie GoldenEye. Nathan, do you have a history with the movie GoldenEye?
Oh yeah, this is my I'd say this is one of my top 5 favorite James Bond movies.
Okay.
I actually saw this was probably the last one I saw in the theater.
Huh.
I did go to the theater to see it. Just not for any reason. It's just I don't. James Bond is one of those things. Like I thought it was really cool when I was a kid,
Yeah.
growing up, and but I've always kind of put it in this thing like James Bond movies for me are always a spectacle. I'm not going to parse them too closely I'm not going to do like big reality checks on them. Um, but this one came out at a certain time and place. It's always been very interesting. It was the collapse of the Soviet Union. So it had those themes in it. I saw this in the theater and I thought at the time, oh, this is an amazing movie. It's like, this is really cool. I haven't watched it a lot since, and viewing it more recently, it's like, well, there's a lot of this that doesn't hold up, but it's still this is still a cool movie and fun to watch.
It's a really cool movie. I don't think I've actually ever sat down and watched this movie all the way through.
Oh, okay.
I think I've just seen bits and pieces of it, and also played the video game a bunch, even though I never owned it.
Okay.
Which the video game.
So
The video game came out like 2 years later on the Nintendo 64.
Okay.
At the time, it was kind of revolutionary for a console because it was like it wasn't the first, but it was one of the first like fully 3D first-person shooters on a console.
Okay.
Which Quake had already come out the year before, so that already revolutionized everything. But there's some fun stuff in the video game where it's like they had body hit, like where you shot somebody in the body, like they reacted to it, like they shoot them in the shoulder, they spin around because they got shot in the shoulder, or you shoot them in the leg and they hop around, or they fall over because you shot them in the leg. Stuff like that, like hadn't been done before, and some of like the look down the sniper scope stuff, which I'm not sure anybody done that yet before. So it was a very revolutionary game for its time, even though it was like still kind of like haphazard and thrown together, and nowadays looks pretty quaint, but back then it was pretty revolutionary.
Well, you could actually play a first person shooter like that on a console. You didn't need a full on PC. So I heard that was like it was a very democratizing first person shooter because a lot of people could play it. Just people who had gaming computers at home.
Well, I mean, like the first Quake had come out like the year before, and that like you could play that on a computer without because like 3D graphic cards weren't a common thing in all computers yet.
Yeah.
And so, John Carmack and his team, made a software emulator to make it so that it worked on computers without 3D cards, which is amazing. Because I also learn about the history of that game, and it was like a fucking total mess like a week before it came out. Like the game didn't work a week before it came out.
I've heard some podcasts with John Carmack on them, and it's like, oh, this is an interesting cat here. This guy's done some things.
Oh yeah, he's literal genius. He's also one of those Texas guys and a libertarian, so a lot of weird things have happened lately. Because he's definitely a guy that's like, well, I'm a millionaire and I'm literally a genius. Like NASA consults me. There's probably something that uses my legacy code in it because I'm a genius. And somehow he's, that genius and that being a millionaire just completely out of the loop of what normal people are dealing with.
Yeah, imagine that.
Because there's been a bunch of things where it's like, wait, are you connected to QAnon? It's like, no. It's like, well, why did you spend $1,600 to buy this QAnon spot? It's like, or why did you get paid by these QAnon people to make an appearance? It's like, oh, I didn't know what that was about.
Yeah. They said some things I liked, and I figured, yeah, what the hell? Now I'm going to return to the fortress of autism and keep what I'm
doing. Even millionaires who are literal geniuses and not just the people who inherited a bunch of $1 million can be dumbasses sometimes. So and it comes for us all.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm into one of my sideline hobbies besides like building models and reading books is I'm into like conspiracy stuff. Not like I believe in it. I just like to know about it and research it. Like, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess I kind of am like in the Oliver Stone tradition. Like, I like his kind of thinking about, it's like, oh, there's conspiracies, but there's an overarching like brush of evil on everything. So you can find conspiracies and everything, but really it's just the evil that drives everyone. That's interesting to like, take note of and see the philosophy behind it. I'm not particularly looking for details and stuff because that's just the path of madness. This isn't some LARPing thing where I'm involved in it, but even I can be fooled by stuff sometimes where it's like, wait, is that real? Or it's like, hey, I like what this guy said about this one thing. And you find out, well, Nathan, he's adjacent to neo-Nazis. Like, well, no, I didn't like that part. That wasn't the thing. So I've kind of just given up on commentating on it because it's so weird and involved. It's like Doctor Who canon. Like, I can't keep it all straight. It's like these people with those people, and it's the pedophiles and the Nazis and these people and the Rosicrucians. It's like, huh? Okay, whatever. Have fun. Trump has a time machine and Nikola Tesla's still alive. Great. Sounds like the best combination ever.
I remember one time Ian from Forgotten Weapons, he found like some transcript which was about like the war in Crimea that was currently before like the Ukraine war broke out and stuff like that, and like
the invasion of Eastern Ukraine before it became the total invasion in 2022. Okay.
And like this guy had like a manuscript like, what weapons are being used there? What's going on? And he's like, oh, this is amazing. And then like he got his publishing company to put it out. And as soon as he puts it out, somebody's like, hey, do you know that guy's a neo-Nazi?
Yeah.
And then they had to retract everything.
Yeah, that guy's in the Baba Yar reenactment battalion. Like, oh no. Oh, I didn't know that.
But yes, I too like to walk up the line of like, those two facts are interesting, but I don't like to like, and now this means that. It's like, well, now I'm going to put that to the side until there's more context, but that's weird.
I mean, I'm willing to believe almost anything you say as long as it jibes with my personal philosophical belief. However, I'm not willing to transmit that to the public anymore because I don't know what I'm saying because everything's so interconnected now. I don't know what's what. I don't know what this has to do with GoldenEye.
Oh, we're talking about GoldenEye, the video game, that leads to Carmack, and because I try to look up like how many, like because I think in $90s this movie made like something like 200 million worldwide, which seems like it should have been more, but I don't know. That could correlate to like $500 million nowadays.
Well, let me see what happened. It made $356.4 million worldwide.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
And that's in 90s bucks because it was 60 million to make.
Do you know like what movie that year made more, or where it was on the top 10 list, or was it on the top 10 list of?
Oh yeah, I'm sure it was. Let me see. I was looking up real quick. Go ahead with what you were saying.
But yeah, because I was trying to figure, I was like, what was more success? Was actually the video game like somehow more successful in some ways, and in some ways, what it said it sold 8 million copies. But like Nintendo 64 games in that day, because they were still using cartridges, was actually more expensive. So sometimes they were sold at $60 at that time. And so 8 million copies, it could be anywhere from, for adjusting from 50 to 60, that could be like 400 million to $480 million, which would have been more successful than the movie. But I'm not sure how that all correlates. But, it was a very successful video game for, especially coming out, especially since that it didn't come out in time with the movie. It came out 2 years later.
Yeah. Okay, GoldenEye was number 9 that year.
What was number 1?
Batman Forever. And after that, Apollo 13, Toy Story, the first one, Pocahontas, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, Casper. Die Hard with a Vengeance, Crimson Tide. Coming in at number 10, Waterworld.
So a top 10 movie, but almost for its entire life seen as a commercial failure. So
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
What, Waterworld?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, that's because they would have had to make almost 500 million because their sets were destroyed like twice.
Yeah.
And also it was just a really weird movie. I mean, I like it, but it's like, it's because it's so weird. It's like David
But
Lynch decided to do sci-fi or something.
but its reputation is that it was a bomb that like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
didn't make any money whatsoever when that's not true. Like you can debate the quality of the movie, but it did business. It just didn't do enough for what the production cost. Or it probably did, but because of how Hollywood accounting works, whatever.
Yeah.
Like we needed this movie to be a tax write-off, so it was, despite its success. um. So I think this is probably. Oh, I didn't even look up when this got released. I'll have to do that right now. I always forget to change that in the notes because.
Oh, November 17th, 1995.
Okay. So yeah, just in time for the holidays. Live editing. Oh, I still gotta change it from Jackie Brown to GoldenEye. Which I don't necessarily know how to spell it because some of it has the it's like concatenated together and the I has a capitalization, but it's all one word. It's got that camel case going for it.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just GoldenEye with all like capital letter, then all lowercase, and sometimes it's got the camel case going on. Director is Martin Campbell, who interesting director. I'd say he's an above average action director.
Yeah.
He's done some movies I like, but not everything he does is good.
He did my favorite James Bond movies of each era of James Bond.
Yeah, they got this guy to basically reboot the Bond franchise twice, and he knocked it out of the park both times, and they're completely different movies.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I don't know if that was totally him or if that was like the production company behind it, but that's weird.
I'm not sure. The thing about GoldenEye that's different from Casino Royale, GoldenEye was the first James Bond movie, I think, where it was not based on an Ian Fleming novel. I think it was based on, I think Ian Fleming's house was called GoldenEye, and they're just like, okay, yeah, we'll take that. Even though most of the other movies were like incredibly loose adaptations of Ian Fleming novels. So this one was just like, yeah, let's just make a story.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah.
I remember like he did the Mask of Zorro movie, which I liked. They did a follow-up called The Legend of Zorro, which I never liked. I heard it was good, but I never saw it. But also, like, I was just going to like Mask of Zorro because I like Desperado so much that it's like, man, I want to see Antonio Banderas in everything.
Yeah.
So Mask of Zorro is good. Assassin sucked, but he was good in it. Yeah, Antonio. Yeah, there was a lot of like weird stuff that just Antonio Banderas got shoved in, where it's like he was the best thing in a bad movie, but sometimes that just happens.
Yeah, that's called contracts. It's called movie deals.
Well, I also remember like they did that Once Upon a Time in Mexico. I was like, this is gonna be awesome. They gave Robert Rodriguez like 20 times the budget of Desperado to make a sequel. It's like, this is gonna be awesome, and it was just kind of like okay to mediocre.
Yeah,
and really the best thing in it was the Johnny Depp character. Which they were gonna do like a spin-off with just his character, which like that would have been neat. I don't know how they keep, because like the neatest thing about it is like he gets his eyes ripped out. He's like the CIA agent. He puts sunglasses on, and then like the blood stains on his like makes it kind of like he has like a weird mask on, and he's like holding double fisting Uzis, and then like a kid that sells gum is like telling him where to shoot, which in like movies like kind of based on swordsman era stuff, that's like a whole genre unto itself, like the blind swordsman movies. Like there's tons of them.
Yeah.
And so I would have liked to see the blind gunman CIA movie.
That would have been good.
Let's see, what else has he directed that I recognize? He directed a miniseries called Edge of Darkness, and then he directed the movie version of it. I don't even remember what that's about. I know it has Mel Gibson in it. I don't even know what that's about.
I think that was like a, is that the corrupt cop movie?
Probably.
I don't remember. Can't remember that. Yeah.
Oh, he directed Green Lantern. That's not great.
Wasn't that like a huge success? Isn't that why they try to? Is that always the movie people try to make Ryan Reynolds like hurt his feelings? Like, hey, Green Lantern, awesome. Just seems really shitty. He's like, I was just the actor.
Yeah, no, his latest affair doesn't seem that great. I remember that people were talking about The Foreigner because that was like Jackie Chan in a serious role.
That movie was miserable but fun to watch at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a dark movie.
But yeah, of course he did. He did the first Brosnan Bond with GoldenEye here, and he did the first Daniel Craig Bond movie, Casino Royale. And like, yeah, they're completely different movies and completely different styles and stuff. So that's pretty amazing that he can just knock out these two Bond movies.
Yeah, the best one of each, generation of guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could only say that maybe Skyfall could be better than Casino Royale because it's actually a more serious take on Bond. But it's not a fun movie, but it's a better movie. Because that movie is actually, it's like, let's deal with like the drama of Bond and have like serious consequences, and there's not really big action sequences. It's all like more dramatic than it is giant goofy action sequences. And then I never saw Spectre or the latest one because I didn't really hear great things about them. Well, I really heard bad things about Spectre. The latest one, the last Craig one, I heard was fine, but I just still haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's one of those things I kind of got. I watched Casino Royale at home.
Yeah.
Like years after it came out, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is kind of cool. But I really didn't. I did watch Quantum of Solace and the other ones. But I haven't really caught up with it. And there's no reason. I'm just kind of like, that's something I did almost when I was a kid. So I was like, oh, yeah. James Bond is cool. It's like, yeah, of course I was in my 20s when this came out. So,
and the cinematographer is Phil Mayhew, who basically just works a lot with Martin Campbell, but he does a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, let me go down his stuff I recognize from his list because he does a lot of things. First thing we recognize is he is cinematographer for The Long Good Friday.
Yep. Fourth Protocol.
What's Fourth Protocol? I don't remember that.
Oh, that's the one with Michael Caine and Pierce Brosnan. He's Pierce Brosnan's like a Soviet agent, and they're trying to smuggle a nuclear weapon onto a RAF base, or maybe it's a U.S. Air Force base in England, because all the people protested our nuclear weapons being there. And yeah,
I guess that would have been sort of relevant to this movie. I never knew that existed.
Yeah, it's actually not a bad movie.
He directed the TV movie for Max Headroom, like the first appearance of Max Headroom.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
He did Highlander 2, The Quickening.
Yes.
I guess I would say one of the worst Highlander movies, but there's really only the first one that's good. So
yeah. I mean, Highlander 2, The Quickening's cool if you just like, hey, I'm just watching this. I'm not going to like ponder too deeply anything that's going on.
Then he has a run here, I'd say. Well, I don't know. Some people like No Escape. Do you know what that is?
Yes, it's the like Ray Liotta
like
action.
Yeah,
it's like futuristic prison camp.
Yeah.
Because like who's in it? Like Lance Henriksen, Ray Liotta, Kevin Dillon. There's a bunch of other people. Ernie Hudson's in it.
Yeah.
And they're on an island, and
like that was one of those like I recognize it from cable movies, but I don't necessarily have like an attachment to it. Then he did GoldenEye, The Saint, Mask of Zorro, Entrapment.
Okay.
So if you want to thank somebody for very good camera placement, that here we go, filming.
Yep.
Phil May knew where to put that camera.
Oh yes.
A Bicentennial Man, which I wouldn't say is a good movie, but I remember being a big movie at the time.
It's like a very high quality movie as far as how it looks.
So then we have some stuff in between, but that was a fairly decent run for him. 2005, Legend of Zorro, then Casino Royale, then after
which he
Casino
won a BAFTA for cinematography.
and after Casino Royale, how does he celebrate? He goes and makes Beverly Hills Chihuahua.
I'm going to celebrate by getting paid.
They came back together to do Edge of Darkness movie. Then he does Smurfs. He does Here Comes the Boom. What's that guy's name? The Kevin James UFC movie. If you don't know what that is.
Oh, no, I don't.
He's like a teacher who he used to be a fighter, and then suddenly he has to become a UFC fighter, and yeah, it's a completely ridiculous movie. I remember watching it just to see how bad it was, and it was totally fine when it should have been terrible, because I was expecting it to be like, oh, this is like Grown Ups, right? It just makes money, but everybody just goes and sees it because all the big names are in it. Here, there's not really big names. It's pretty much just Kevin James, and I think, who else is in it? And Salma Hayek. Yeah, that's pretty much the biggest names in it.
Oh, okay.
The Smurfs 2. He did the SpongeBob movie. And then for the last, 7 years, he has done nothing I recognize. So,
Okay.
looks like he's just doing short movies, I guess. Yeah, it's all been short movies. I don't know. Yeah, he might be elderly at this point.
Semi-retired, yeah.
Yeah, he's born in 1941. So.
He's 81, so yeah, he's
yeah.
probably slowing down a little bit.
Yeah. Of course, you got. I'm gonna have that. I got Michael. I don't even know who this is. I got story by Michael France. I'm trying to even look up his stuff, and of course, based on characters by Ian Fleming, but he didn't. This wasn't based on any of his stuff. Oh no, I did look up his stuff. Okay, so I got a story by Michael France. His is kind of interesting because his first big movies he wrote Cliffhanger, which was a huge movie.
Yeah.
He gets story by credit on GoldenEye. Then he goes on and makes the early Marvel movies before Marvel was making their own movies.
Oh, like the Ang Lee Hulk and stuff and the Punisher. Okay.
And the Fantastic Four movie. And then he died in 2013 due to complications from diabetes.
Oh, no.
But, yeah, I mean, so yeah, a lot of his stuff is memorable. So you got that. And then, where were the other guys? You have Jeffrey Kane and Bruce Fernstein. I don't even think I look up Bruce Fairstein. They didn't write it together. Fairstein's, he was just kind of, let's see here. Now I'm just looking up Internet Movie Database pages. I'm trying to pick stuff out, but I'm kind of. He wrote GoldenEye. He wrote my favorite title of a movie, but I don't know if it's actually good, called The Constant Gardener.
Okay. That's pretty good.
I like that title because it sounds really stupid and meaningful at the same time. It's like, oh, The Constant Gardener. Right.
It's a John le Carre novel, I believe.
He wrote Exodus, Gods and Kings, which was the Ridley Scott 10 Commandment movie that I don't even remember happened.
I've watched it once. It's like, this is long. And usually Ridley Scott can do no wrong, but it's for me, but it's like, okay, this is kind of a slog.
I thought he had
Ridley Scott's been trying to take on God for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
Doing some strange stuff. He's like, God, come on, fight me, God.
They probably had so much CGI stuff left over from Kingdom of Heaven. It's like, let's just keep making movies around that area.
Yeah. Don't keep the cameras rolling.
And then I don't even think I look up Bruce Fernstein, but I'll just look. They didn't write it together, so it was kind of somebody ended up with it. Okay, this
Bruce
guy,
Fernstein's did enough bunch of stuff on other James Bond movies.
Yeah, it looks like he's just kind of the production company that has the rights to Bond. It looks like they just kind of get him to come in and do a pass on stuff. So, yeah, he basically did all of the. He worked on a bunch of the Bond video games, and he basically worked on the Brosnan Bond movies.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's that guy. Oops, shit. Close the notes. Need the notes open. Now nobody's gonna see me scroll through the notes. Oh, now I gotta put that on live production.
Ah, here we go.
Now I gotta change this. That's not changing. That's not good.
Oh. This one had an interesting soundtrack. It was by the French composer Eric Serra. It kind of had that. You would associate the soundtrack with this as what you would generically call 90s soundtrack, but this was one of the first movies. This was the first James Bond movie to have that kind of electronic sound to it.
It's very weird.
Yeah, it was never used again.
Yeah, because there's things I pick out. It's like, why is this in the score? Because like I think probably for like the first hour and a half of the movie, they have like kind of things that are unrecognizably Bond. And
Yeah.
then for the later half of the movie, they just kind of bring in the Bond theme.
Well, there was actually a whole sound. This guy made the whole soundtrack for the whole movie that they never once used the original Bond theme. And the studio came in and said, "No, we've got to have. We can't have this." Because this guy did like The Fifth Element and The Professional soundtrack. Like that's the stuff he'd done before this. So
okay.
He did The Fifth Element after this actually, but that's kind of the wheelhouse he was in.
Okay.
And he also did the original La Femme Nikita, the 1990 movie.
Okay, yeah. So yeah. If you're gonna do some electronica, hire a French person because they know what they're doing with that stuff. The French know 80s new wave better than anybody else in the world.
Still to this day, they're still producing it.
Yeah.
40 years later, it's still like, nope, this is all from the 80s.
And of course, the cast is Pierce Brosnan being the new Bond.
The second non-British guy to play James Bond.
Oh, is he like Welsh or something?
Oh, he's Irish.
Oh, he's Irish. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I knew that. I'm not
sure. We had a Scotsman, and then two British guys and an Irishman. I mean, I don't know if he identifies as that, but that's where he's from.
Okay.
I actually don't know much about him. I remember he was Remington's. Yeah, he's Irish actor.
Okay.
He's from Drogheda County, Louth, Ireland. Oh, he's also a U.S. citizen. So
when did Lawnmower Man come out?
That's a good question. When did Lawnmower Man come out?
Because that might be the first thing I remember Pierce Brosnan from.
That's right. He was in that. Weird.
Well, I remember all the really bad CGI stuff from the 90s.
1992.
Okay, so yeah, that's probably the first time I recognized Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah,
but
I remember.
I wouldn't saw that in theaters. I would have saw that on cable.
Yeah. Lawnmower Man's in your head now. Yeah, he sure is. Not gonna forget this.
But like, did you know Pierce Brosnan before he was Bond?
Yeah, he was in Remington Steele.
Okay, you watched that. Okay.
This is why he wasn't because he was supposed to be James Bond when Timothy Dalton came in. Like but he had a TV contract because he became so popular. It was like, this guy's going to be the next Bond once they cancel Remington Steele. And they're like, oh, he's so popular, we're just going to extend the show for 2 more years. So he was Timothy Dalton pushed him out. Remington Steele was a cool show for an 80s show, though.
What's the conceit of Remington Steele? Is he just a private eye, or is it something where it's like somebody's like he's like a fake private eye, and somebody's like, is something with the novel that he's like not really the person that he says is? I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, well, it's there's a woman who owns it. She's actually a private investigator. But because she's a woman and she's a licensed investigator, she couldn't find any clients because no one wanted to hire a woman.
Oh, okay.
So she hired him, or she basically wrote him as a character.
Okay.
And then he becomes like a real person. Because the guy she finds that plays him is just like a con man and a thief. And he's like, hey, could you play Remington Steele? Act like this crazy detective. But I'm really the brains of the operation. And he was like, oh yeah, sure. And they kind of grow as people, and it sort of started to sag about 2 years in, but I remember watching it a lot. It was kind of like what was it? It was it was before Moonlighting, because that was another detectives type crazy acting shows. But so it was kind of like on that line, but a little more. I don't know. It's a little more cultured than Moonlighting.
Okay.
But like I said, it got canceled, or they were going to cancel it, and then Pierce Brosnan became such a. It's like, oh, he's going to be the next James Bond. They're like, no, we're extending your contracts. Like, oh, he's not going to be the next James. And they brought in the Timothy Dalton era James Bond, which, weirdly enough, if you've read any of the Ian Fleming novels, it's like The Living Daylights, how Timothy Dalton played him. I don't know if we'll ever get to that movie. We should someday.
Maybe.
That's actually how James Bond really was.
Yeah,
kind of dark, angry guy who kills people. It's like that's real James Bond.
I always champion the Timothy Dalton era Bond. He's my favorite Bond because he is the dark, evil Bond. Because Timothy Dalton was basically born to play bad guys in movies, and here he is, interestingly, playing the good guy. And I believe both those movies are rated R, and License to Kill is an extremely violent movie, especially for a Bond movie.
Yep.
Has a lot of interesting ideas, isn't good, but has a lot of cool stuff to it. And Living Daylights is probably one of my favorite Bond movies. And that cargo plane sequence, like they keep like remaking that, basically that sequence for action movies like every 2 years. So it's like really influential. Probably has the best Bond car, because that's when they switched to the BMWs, and those kind of late 80s BMWs look really cool.
I thought the Living Daylights he still had the Aston Martin.
I want to remember it because I thought that's when it has the car chase scene where it has like the spiked tires in the BMW. I remember. I
thought that was an Aston Martin. I thought it was I could be wrong, but I thought the Brosnan era was the beginning of the BMWs.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Let's see here. What car?
Yeah, just look it up. We'll know right away.
Bond have in the Living Daylights. What the hell is that? A V8 Volante convertible?
That's a Aston Martin.
Okay. I guess I just remember. I guess maybe I just remembered it. I remember as the boxy era of cars, so maybe just any boxy car I picked up as BMW. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a weird Euro car that you'd never see over here, except unless you lived in California or something, because they were like super expensive. What is your favorite James Bond movie? Is it Living Daylights?
Yeah, it might be The Living Daylights. Okay. But I haven't seen that in a while, so I don't know. So it might be just Casino Royale. Or
my favorite. I'll get the cheap answer is the Goldfinger, and the reason I say that is it's got my favorite Bond villain. Like the most practical Bond villain ever was the guy from Goldfinger. Because remember when he has him on the table under the industrial laser, and he's like, "Do you expect me to talk?" "No, I expect you to die." It's like, I'm not going to tell you my plan. Like, I like this guy. This guy knows what he's doing. That's also, I think, was the most violent Bond movie too. Was Goldfinger, because I think he killed like the most people individually.
Well, he get gassed like all of the Fort Knox or whatever. Or did they just like
James Bond killed the most people in that movie. He was directly killed like 20 people.
Oh, okay.
Whereas and I think GoldenEye's like number 2 or 3 for direct kills by James Bond. Yeah, not indirect, like I killed a building full of guys with bombs. Like we don't count those.
Yes, but the most violent kills were License to Kill, because he like kills a guy in a decompression chamber.
Yeah,
throws a guy into like a thing that's like processing cocaine with like rolling spikes on it.
Oh yeah, that's a crazy movie.
Also stars Sean Bean, which I don't think I recognize. This might be the first movie I know him from. Of course, like Game of Thrones, but that's way later on, and then Lord of the Rings, but I don't know. Is this the first time you recognize Sean Bean?
No, because I like the Sharp series on BBC, so I knew who this guy was vaguely. That was before he died and everything. That when he was rifles and stuff. That was the old. I forget. That was like colonial Britain. It was a cool show. Yeah.
I guess I could have looked this up immediately, but which came first, Magnum PI or Remington Steel?
Oh, Magnum PI.
Okay,
I think Magnum PI was the first. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure.
well, they'd have to like they're probably going for that, right?
What do you mean?
The name. They're both gun manufacturers, and it's the character's name. Well, I guess
Oh,
Magnum's technically not a gun manufacturer, but invokes a gun.
yeah. That's why they went with the name.
Okay. Was
Like,
there?
yeah, 'cause I remember Pierce Brosnan. Weirdly enough, first movie, The Long Good Friday, was Pierce Brosnan's first movie.
Huh. Okay.
He was credited as first Irishman.
um. Oh man. What? Do you remember? Oh man, there was. I'm trying to think of. Was there a detective show that even have a more blatant gun name to the show? But I remember there was like. Oh, or was it called like Hammer or something like that? I can't remember.
Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer.
Was it?
Nope, Magnum PI came first, 1980.
Okay.
Remington Steele is 82. Completely irrelevant, but
Well, I just like one had to come after the other, and they were probably like, "Oh, this one's successful. Let's do this."
yes, no, I did say Magnum PI came first. Yeah, Magnum PI was 2 years before. It was all 80s TV.
Yeah. And then the third on the list is Isabella Scarepko.
Yep.
Who she's still acting. She's doing like Swedish shows. But yeah, this is kind of her biggest thing. She's also in Reign of Fire.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
We'll do at some point.
Yeah, that's a weird movie. You got to do that one just for the cast alone. It's like, how'd they get these guys to do this?
Well, like I remember, like this is a cool movie, but I remember just being very disappointing. And like I haven't seen it in a while, so I have to analyze it. I'm wondering, was it just like, did they run out of budget, or was the story the problem? I don't know. We'll have to investigate.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's got a great cast. I don't remember it being great. It's a cool idea too. It's
yeah,
like dragons. That's neat.
And the people who did like some of the best X-Files and created Millennium, like that's who wrote the screenplay. But I just remember being like, yeah, a lot of cool stuff, but ultimately I remember being disappointed with that movie. So yeah, I'm not going to start with Act 1, because generally how Bond movies work is they have what I'm going to call a prologue. And then you have your credit sequence, and then you actually get into the movie. So we have the prologue, and we get the classic Bond is framed by a gun barrel, and he shoots the person with the gun, and then they bleed into the gun barrel for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason.
And of course, this is Pierce Brosnan as the new James Bond for the 90s, which I think he did like 1 or 2 movies in the 2000s, but that was it. I think it was like, there's like 2 of them that had like live or die in it. I can't remember. Yeah, it was just what are all the Bond movies? So you have GoldenEye here. Then there was Tomorrow Never Dies was the next one, and then I can't remember. The World Is Not Enough is the
World
third
Is Not
one.
Enough. Die Another Day.
Die Another Day. Yeah. So
That was, I think, the last one. That was 2002.
Yeah, that was one with Halle Berry.
Yeah, this is the highest quality by far of the Brosnan era James Bond movies.
Yeah.
Even though they had some cool stuff in The World Is Not Enough.
Well, that's the thing with Bond movies. They all have cool stuff, but a lot of the times they just have really convoluted stories that don't really hold together. The problem with The World Is Not Enough is that, like, yeah, let's buy this supermodel as like a nuclear scientist named Christmas Jones. Is like, no one's gonna buy it. Yeah. So we transition, like the gun barrel like goes down to like the corner, and then like it like opens up into like it's on a dam. We got a prop plane flying towards the dam. This is the Verzaka Dam in Switzerland, which I decided to look that up because it looks very distinct. I'm like, is that a real dam? And yes, it is. Then we cut to Bond's like running atop the dam with a rope, like in a hurry, but nobody's chasing him. So he straps into this like some scaffolding, and then here he bungee jumps down the dam, and it's kind of like, multiple camera angles and like kind of not really slow motion, but we just really eat up the scene, linger on it.
Would make that dam seem like it's like 15 miles tall.
Oh
too.
yeah. And also this is post fugitive, so I'm not sure if they're invoking that. It's like, yeah, we're gonna do a better fugitive jump.
That could be.
Of course, in that one they just threw a dummy off a thing, so you know this is a guy doing a bungee jump. So, and then like before like it bungees back up, he has like a grappling hook gun that he shoots and holds him in place so he doesn't get bungeed away. Which I did want to see the process of unhooking himself from that bungee. Like that's got to be a whole thing.
Yeah, where's the release switch on that? That's a hell of a winder you have on that firing hook you have. But see, that's James Bond movies. It's just like ridiculous stuff.
Well, also the grappling hook has a laser on it. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, later on, a watch is going to have a laser on it, but technically that's almost a decade later. So you know they're just better with the technology. Which to power that laser, you'd have to have like basically like a nuclear power plant in his watch battery. But
yeah, or at least a backpack.
But again, this is James Bond. You're just going to let it go. You just want to see cool stuff happen. Here we get titles: the Archangel Chemical Weapons Facility in USSR. Yeah, this is where Bond uses a grappling gun as a laser to like just open up a door. And then they cut to like the inside where there's a guy going. It's a bathroom, so there's a guy going to the toilet, and some other guy like leaves the room, and then Bond shows up, but like behind the newspaper that the guy's reading. So nowadays, that never would have got by him because he would have been looking at a cell phone. He would have been in his peripheral vision. No. Although weirdly enough, there's two movies that like that. While watching this, that like invoked my memory. One was Terminator 2 for some weird reason. The other one was Mission Impossible, which comes out a year later. So it was they were probably too far in production of Mission Impossible to steal anything from this movie. So it was just kind of like, you know, shared consciousness going on here. But yeah, a lot of Bond being upside down, hanging from things here. So because he's upside down when the guy pulls down the newspaper and then he just like knocks him out. Or what does he do? Does he knock him out, or does he like hit him with a trank, or is he just he just kills him? He just shoots him with a gun, right?
No, I think he knocks him out.
Oh, okay. And then I wrote, hey, and he goes and
I think there was I'm sorry, real quick. I think there was like a breakthrough in like wire work technology during this time.
Yeah.
Because there seemed to be a lot of that going on in movies. Because remember, like we were talking about the cinematographer, like 2 years later is doing what was the movie that was all about the chick's ass? Where they're
Entrapment.
Yeah, Entrapment is like, yeah, that was all wire work stuff. So there must have been some breakthrough then that they could do stuff like that and film it, and then it just kind of wore off.
Man, well, I remember, I'm sure when the Descender was created, but the Descender was kind of like a bungee cord that would bungee to like an exact point.
Yeah.
And then you could just like, it would just slow you down and then stop, and then you could just unclip from it. Because you remember that movie you watched called like was it The First Power?
Yes.
And there's that guy who does like an amazing scene where he just like falls to the ground, like seemingly no effects whatsoever. The guy was just on one of those descender things, and you just never saw the cord. And as far as you know, a guy just jumped to the ground from 20 feet up. So that must have been around, because that was like, I think that was 91. So yeah, this thing must have been around there, figuring out new uses for it. But yeah, definitely, yeah, like wire work stuff was big around this time.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, the next year you got Mission Impossible, and then of course that becomes a famous scene and everybody spoofs it. So I'm trying to think like I know that Ace Ventura would have been the same year, but I'm trying to remember who famously spoofed the Mission Impossible scene. I can't remember.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember.
But you know, it's also there's a lot of things where it's just repelling and stuff like that. It was like, hey, that looks cool on camera. Let's do that. Of course, you ever seen like, where is it at? It's either in like South Korea or someplace where they have like their like special police forces, and like they'll have this thing. It's like, well, how do you get in that window? And you just have like 3 guys in a pole, and they like put the pole against the window, and a guy just runs up the pole. It's like, who's doing that? And it's like,
oh yeah, I have seen that. It's like, is that a stunt? It's like, oh, that's police work. Like,
well, that's fit police work.
Yeah. Those are the parkour police.
Yeah.
They're coming for you up their stick.
Because like it's somewhat genius because it's also like that's got to be very dangerous, but that's also it's like, well, the setup for this is almost nothing.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, they're
is,
not doing they're not like planning that out like hugely. It's
yeah.
like okay.
Which like with rappelling ropes and stuff like that, like you got to have like anchor points and all this stuff. You got to plan that out. You can't just do that on the fly. But you know, in movies you can because that's just cool. That's why you have grappling hooks for, and that's why grappling hooks basically don't exist in real life because they don't work reliably.
Yeah, because you're not going to throw this thing on a roof and want to get halfway up, and if you feel that thing twitch at all, you're just going to, oh no, it's like no one has any faith in that. Like, yeah, that thing's going to hold.
And like in comic books and stuff, it's just like, oh, it just magically punches through the wall and has like some things that spread out. It's like, yeah, that's only going to work on so many. You're using this. You want this to work on every surface possible, but that's only going to work on like specific surfaces, and you got to choose the right thing. Again, it's James Bond. You just let it happen. It's Batman. Yeah. You just let it happen. He's a billionaire. It just works. He put the money into it. It's a one-time created thing. It just works all the time for him. So, but I also wrote like when he leaves the bathroom, he like opens up the door and like he's kind of framed by the doorway, and he kind of has like the gun up, and like the camera has him like in close up, and it's like they use that scene to show off like the Brosnan Bond movies like all the time. And I didn't even recognize like, oh, this is the scene that's from. But like whenever it's like Brosnan Bond, like this, they just have him opening the door and putting his, because it's a good like, here's Bond, he's got a gun, here's his face. So there's like a lot of things for this movie. It's like, oh yeah, when they do clip shows of Bond, like there's a bunch of stuff from GoldenEye they use because this is the one that's the most loved. And then while Bond's sneaking around, he gets held up by a shadowy figure that ends up being Sean Bean, who's playing Alec Trevelyan.
Yes.
Who's 006. Which, has there been other, like, 00 agents that Bond has interacted with?
I don't remember. Maybe there has, but there's never been one that came back as an evil character.
Okay.
This is the first and only time.
Also, this is where I wrote, what's with the sleigh bells in the score? Which, to me, like, evokes Die Hard.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, too. I thought the same thing.
Like, why are they doing this? There's also, like, what I don't know how to describe it. In the video game, it's like when you have the pause screen, they have the same thing. I don't know if it's from this movie or if they recreated the score for the video game, but they call it the sonar ping. Where it sounds like it's just like somebody dropped a PVC tube in like an open like warehouse, an empty warehouse, which is like boom.
Yeah.
So in the video game they call it the radar ping, but it just like happens every once in a while in the score.
It's just designed to cause tension in scenes where people are traversing rooms.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, did the guards see him? No. And then later it became a video game called Splinter Cell. And it's like,
so they start working together because they're both 00 agents. Oh, it's weird. It's like I almost want the explanation of like how did he get in, or what was he doing there in the first place? Like, is this happenstance? Is this what they're supposed to do? Like, did he do any cool stuff to get in, or did he just like walk in there? But again, it's a Bond movie, so you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. It's like, you want Bond to do cool stuff. Like, why are you worried about logistics? So 006 comes in, he just shoots a scientist, just flat out kills him. So it seems kind of mean, yeah. But, they are producing chemical weapons, so I guess.
yeah.
And then they happen upon a chemical vat room. Here an alarm goes off. Not exactly sure why. He like 006 has some kind of device he keeps putting on the door. I don't know what it does. Like, I think it's locking out the door.
That's what I thought, but yeah, I wasn't sure.
Well, there's two sides to the vat room, and one side he didn't touch, and so guards come through there, but they kill them all. And the other side, they have to like shoot through the bulletproof glass. So I'm guessing he just locked the door somehow. Um, they Bond sets the explosives on the chemical vats for 6 minutes. Here's where the Russians, they just shoot the shit out of the bulletproof glass until they can just break it down and get into the room, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that looks cool. Again, we're like, hey, there's a bunch of like nerve gas in this room. How should we access it? Fire into the bulletproof glass until we can. Do everyone get their atropine before we go in? Okay, we're good to go. But again, it's all style over substance, so it's cool.
Yeah. Although it's weird that they show caution later on. They're not worried about the chemical weapons. They're worried about shooting the explosives.
Yeah.
006 gets captured, and then Bond like shortens the timers from 6 minutes to 3 minutes, and then he surrenders for a moment, and then 006 gets shot in the head, or you presume.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, that's one thing. Like, I've never seen this movie not knowing that, so I don't know. Did you not know this when you first saw the movie, that he was going to be the bad guy, or did they show
No,
it
I thought it was going to. I thought it was like, oh, his partner died, and it haunts this man.
Yeah.
You know, and he hates this guy, because you're going to see this guy, this colonel later. This will be the general of the, Russian Federation Aerospace Defense or what, it's like, oh, so this is the bad guy. You always think like this is the bad guy.
Yeah. So was that a good reveal, not knowing that?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Okay. Because like I've never not known the twist, so I didn't know like how to think about that. So
it was kind of weird when you first saw it, and then when you try, like when I put myself back in like in Indiana watching this in a theater, you hear the whole backstory with Trevelyan and the Cossacks and all that, but it's like it's like I don't know what that means, and I don't know what I'm supposed to get from that. Like, I know who the Cossacks are. They were like the horsemen who fought in Russia and back in the day, and it's like, are they bad? Are they good? I don't know, but they collaborated with Nazis, so they must be bad, but it's not really like. But it was like, oh, it was a cool thing. It's like, oh, 006 is the bad guy. I didn't really get or care about his backstory. It didn't really hang together very well, even in the reviewing of this recently. But it's like, okay, it was cool.
Well, I didn't even know his backstory until watching this movie. I didn't know there was a twist to it. I thought it was just, oh, I saw an opportunity to make a lot of money. Yeah. Also, didn't even know that there was a time skip here. I didn't remember that at all. I thought this just went into the rest of the movie. I didn't know there was 9 years later, which actually makes sense.
Yeah.
Here they do a 180. We go from like, my best friend just died to, now I'm going to comically hide behind gas tanks to get away from the guy.
I love this scene because there's like, these people could easily defeat this just by rushing him. It's like, oh, we can't shoot, but there's 10 of us. And so we can't wildly fire around the room, but if we rush this guy, he might shoot a few of us, but we're definitely going to shoot him with just controlled fire. But of course, again, it's just funny that he's like, everyone's like, hey, wait a minute. And I like the actor who plays Oramov. His name's Gottfried John. He was a German actor. He died a while back. But it's like, he's always like, hey, hang back, everyone. Let's see what this guy's doing. He does that a lot in this movie. Hang back. Let's see what this spy person's doing. And
Pierce Brothers doesn't run with this cart. He walks comically slow with it. Like it's paced for comedy.
Yeah. And he does it well. That's like Pierce Brosnan is like believable with those little comic moments. The master at that was Roger Moore. He could always do like the weird quick smile, like, oh, something crazy is about to happen.
But I mean, that was kind of what Brosnan probably did best. Is kind of he was supposed to be this new Bond, so they did kind of make him sort of gritty, but he also had to do the ridiculous, crazy, funny Bond stuff, and he probably merged that well. And then when you get to Casino Royale, there's no comedy whatsoever.
Yeah, there's nothing fun about Casino Royale, which is why there's not much fun about Living Daylights either. It's like, but then again, if you actually read one of the Ian Fleming books, because they're dated but fun, it's like, oh yeah, James Bond's just kind of an angry person.
Yeah,
but there's all kinds of stuff with James Bond about class warfare and my parents died and I grew up poor in an unjust country and
And the World War II stuff changes the whole thing too, because like
Yeah.
like he was behind enemy lines, killing people. He's seen horrors, so it's like he's a man who's been he's a hardened man who doesn't have a lot of feelings or doesn't mind killing people. So then, he turns on a conveyor belt, to which Oromov's like, "Oh no, my secret or something." Like he's like he doesn't need that conveyor belt to be on to get out of there. But I don't know why it mattered it being on. But he just hits something, and then he shoots like something else, and then just the whole place is just hundreds of canisters of gas fly comically through the air onto the
Yeah, it's like they stored 400 canisters of Novichok or whatever's in these. It never leaks, so you never find out. But it's like they throw all these, and it's like he shoots the lock off this thing on the ceiling that has no immediate access. It's like the canisters are spring loaded somehow, like the magazine of a weapon. They're just flinging them out like this is some Half-Life like design of equipment. It's like, we're gonna make the most dangerous thing possible, and we're gonna spring load it to eject violently. And you don't know how many people died. You assume a few.
Well, I mean, they come through a tunnel later on, so it didn't affect them too much. Bond takes the conveyor belt outside, and then the plane that was like in the opening is now back, and it's like taking off on this like kind of cool but weird runway. I mean, it's obviously like a matte painting of like a made up runway, but it's cool looking. It's like a runway on a mountainside. One way in, one way out. And so like he chases the plane on foot. He gets up to it and he pulls the pilot out, but then he gets thrown out too. So now the plane's just heading towards a cliff with no one on it. And then like, there's motorcycle guys come out of nowhere and everyone's chasing and shooting at him. And like he's able to like knock over some motorcycle guys, grab the motorcycle. He jumps off the cliff with the motorcycle as the plane flies off the cliff. No shoot, flies towards the plane, gets in the plane and pulls it up just before it crashes. Which again, this stunt they've recreated several times in different action movies. I think they did it in one of the Mission Impossible movies, but they made a helicopter, so it was a bit more dangerous in that way.
Yeah. Like, God knows the Mission Impossible, they probably just actually did it.
Yeah.
Like, all right, Tom, can you learn to fly a helicopter for us? In very dangerous situations. Yes, I can't wait. It's like, okay, Tom.
Well, no, it probably went the other way. It's like, we're gonna get a stunt guy to fly this helicopter. No, the fuck you are.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna fly this helicopter. Hey, who's the producer on this movie? It's like, you, Tom. It's like, go fuck yourself. Have you seen the new Mission Impossible movie?
No, I want to. I just haven't got a chance to.
I hear it's okay. I hear it's like one of the middle ones, but like it's fine. But
my first return to the theater in years will probably be next weekend with my son to see Oppenheimer.
Okay.
That's the first time I've been to the theater in years. I think I did another one, but I can't remember. Because I didn't want to go. Even after they said, "Oh, you can go back to the theater," it's like, I'm to get sick. No, thanks.
Did you ever brave to go see Dune in the theater, or did you just watch?
Nope. Okay. I wouldn't do it back then. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
I thought we were all still gonna get sick and die. I didn't know. Even once they said you could, it's like we were still like in the red as a county.
Yeah.
And then you find out like, well, there's only half the people who could have got their shots or what. I was like, oh, screw it. Okay, I'm going out again. But I know there was never anything as interesting enough to me to see.
Yeah. So Bond pulls up the plane, and then of course the chemical plant explodes in the background, either incinerating the chemical weapons or releasing them into the atmosphere. Whatever you want to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only near a dam where it could taint a water source. Yeah, whatever. You gotta power that chemical plant somehow. You know what? I actually don't know any of the standards or necessities for a chemical warfare plant, so good on you, James Bond. I have no idea what the practicality of that would be.
Because the only Archangel I know of in Russia is like a secret city where they did weapons development, but it was a city in Russia. It wasn't called the Archangel Chemical Weapons Facility. That's too on the nose. What was their chemical weapons facility called? Because it was the one where they released all the anthrax and lied about it. I forget. That was that's where it was. Because I read about it in The Dead Hand.
Okay.
I think it was, I don't know. Was it Vrimya? I can't remember. But yeah, the Russians had stuff like this. This is like one of the first movies of like is a trope that came up in a lot of video games, including like the Call of Duty franchise and stuff. What I like to call the Soviet dark tech concept,
Yeah.
where like the Soviet Union was this massive evil empire with just all this cutting edge weaponry now just lying around for anyone to pick up and use. It's like, well, that would have been cool if that was actually true, but it's just a bunch of crap. But I mean, they have some scary stuff, but nothing like Golden.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was always like what these movies are based on, because it's like, well, so because even it's here in the movie where it's because we get it 9 years later, so it's like, okay, this was supposed to take place in the mid '80s when the Cold War was still going on.
Yeah.
And like the thing they would do later on, where it's like, well, we still want Russians to be villains. It's like, what are we gonna do? There's no more like USSR. It's like, well, they still have the infrastructure of all these dangerous weapons. What if all those weapons are now on the market? Like, wouldn't that be dangerous? And that just that made another 30 years of Russian bad guys. And then now you have the Ukrainian war, and you can just keep going with Russian bad guys.
I can't wait till that finally settles out. The movies we're gonna see.
Yeah, I was watching the Nick Fury show, like the first episode, and it takes place in Russia, and I don't know when they started production on that, but that seems kind of weird because it's not like the Ukrainian war is going on. It's just they're in Russia because that's where lies happens.
Yeah. This is where lies and death play out constantly with no, like, can't do that in New York. We still have rules here, but yeah, you can do that in Russia.
Then we have the opening credits, which we get Tina Turner sings GoldenEye.
Yes, the sexiest singer ever, Tina Turner.
And then, of course, we get the constant abstract silhouetted naked ladies and Soviet imagery combined together.
Yeah, they're like smashing picture or statues of Stalin and Lenin and Marx with sledgehammers, and hammers and sickles are rotating around. And then a woman who's a Janus-like, because she's got two heads, is smoking a cigar, and she has another head on the back of her. She opens her mouth and a gun comes out. One of the coolest things I've seen. I forgot about that. It's like, that's weird.
And the gun fires, and then the gun goes back in her mouth.
It's like, did they do that in the movie? I can't remember. But that's a callback to the two-headed god Janus.
Well, I was wondering if that was I didn't know if that was the Zinnia character, because if it was, it could have been some things where it's like one side's pleasure and the other side is pain, but they're linked together and they're one brain. But I think it's just some random,
yeah, just weird image.
Well, I don't think it was her. I think it was just some random model that they hired. Because they also have the chick that plays Natalia. She's in the credit sequence, I believe so.
Oh, okay.
I think. I mean, she has like clothes on and stuff, but I think it's her. And then the silhouette naked ladies, which this is a PG-13 movie, so I'm surprised someone didn't complain about silhouetted nipples or anything.
I think James Bond gets a pass on that because they just have done those intros forever.
Yeah.
It's like you've come to expect that. Oh, by the way, it's a song written by U2.
Huh. Okay.
Well, it says Bono and the Edge is credited and performed by Tina Turner.
All right.
Which is, it's kind of a cool, it's like you hear Tina Turner and you see the visuals and it's like, this is cool, but then you never listen to it again because it only works in this context. It's like, oh, okay. One and done.
I mean, it's like all the other like Bond scores where it's like a brilliant singer just sings the title and then there's words after it, but you don't pay attention to it.
There's a few that I actually have on my playlist. There's like the Nobody Does It Better. I forget who sings. There's one that Carly Simon sings. And then there's Moonraker, who that other lady sings it, who kind of sounds like Tina Turner. I can't think of her name.
I remember the one I liked the most was the one for Quantum of Solace because like the Jack White did it with
Oh yeah,
some
Jack White and Alicia Keys.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was different.
It's like I like this. This isn't a Bond movie soundtrack score, but whatever.
I mean, I think the best one was probably McCartney, "Live and Let Die."
Oh yeah.
That was from because that's like famous on its own. Like people think that that's like a song that like, oh, they just did that independently. It's like, no, that was for a James Bond movie. Because I mean, Guns N' Roses covered that too on the Use Your Illusion that came back. And then people like, oh yeah, that was for a James Bond movie, which like wasn't the best James Bond movie.
Then we have Act 1 now. 9 years later, so like so like that's why it's like, oh, we have, so there's going to be things like, well, now we're past the fall of the Soviet Union, so this is going to be weird that Russians are the bad guys, and so this establishment is like, well, that was back in the Cold War era, you know.
Yeah.
That was Cold War Bond, even though we did have a Cold War Bond, but this is a new Bond. Everything's different except the same Q comes over, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you got the whole Bond universe, you know. Bond was doing its own meta before everyone else.
Well, there was a huge gap because of legal battles between the last James Bond movie and this one. I think it was like the longest hiatus.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the legal troubles, because there's always problems with these James Bond movies. Is like, who owns the rights to what? And the one family was producing them all, and I don't know.
Let's see here. Bond is driving fast on winding roads. I thought this was Money Penny being scared, but it's just some, like, I don't know, psychologist that MI6 hired to evaluate Bond.
Very confusing because it looks a lot like Money Penny.
Yeah.
Of course, he's driving his 1964 Aston Martin DB5.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is where you get both, because I always remember it's like, oh, Pearson Braun drives the BMWs, but here in the beginning, he's like, mostly in this movie, he drives an Aston Martin.
Yeah.
And a tank, and then for a moment he drives a BMW.
And he's racing a Ferrari F35 GTI, which would absolutely pound that It literally has 400 more horsepower. And Aston Martin's a fast car, don't get me wrong, but it's not Ferrari of the 90s fast.
Also, a Ferrari has like downforce and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, one Ferrari tire I think is wider than all four of the tires on the Aston Martin.
But you know, skill wins the day. But
yeah, it's always that.
Here we have Famke Janssen's driving the Ferrari. She plays Xenia Onatopp.
Yep.
Because you know she's on top during sex, I guess.
Almost as good a name as Pussy Galore and Dr. Goodhead. Not quite as good though. I think my favorite is still Dr. Goodhead. It's like, that's amazing. We're just doing that.
Does Octopussy, is that just the name of a character? Is there just like Dr. Octopussy or something?
I think the woman's called that in there. Because there's a woman called Pussy Galore too. And it almost works in those though, because it's like, it's so on the nose. It's like, yeah, we're just having fun.
Yeah.
This one, the Onatop one's a little, it's not as brassy. You like almost have to think about it a second, which kind of knocks it down a little bit, you know, because it's like when you call someone Dr. Goodhead or Pussy Galore, it's like, okay, that's cool. I know what you're doing.
Yeah, Maud Adams is, her character is just Octopussy, so
yeah.
Yeah, so they race. It's kind of a neat race, I guess. Like racing down hills. The Ferrari just jumps one of the hills, which would totally destroy that car, but you know, whatever.
Off-road Ferrari, yeah. And let's go over loose gravel down an incline with like 1 inch of ground clearance. Like nothing could go wrong.
Yeah, you're not gonna bottom that thing out. It already just sits 1 inch off the ground anyway.
Yeah, and the big metal skid plates underneath it will protect it because they add those for extra weight. But it's James Bond, so it's happening.
Yeah, they chase and they narrowly avoid, which I guess now I know the term for it. They avoid a peloton, which is a group of bike riders.
Oh, around here we just call them assholes, but yeah.
Well, if they're in a group, that's a peloton. If it's just one guy,
peloton of assholes. Okay,
yeah. I listened to a podcast and they were talking about like they're getting into like the nitty gritty of like what makes the what's that bike race?
Tour de France.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I was like, oh, like they race and one guy wins. That's all I know, but I didn't know about like all the internal stuff where it's like, oh, there's like mini races in between it. There's like sometimes guys in the team, like they're not meant to win the whole thing, but they have like there's like mini races in between one race where it's like whoever the fastest guy is in this leg on the flat parts of it, like he'll get a trophy for it. He'll be like the fastest guy or the cheetah trophy or something like that. And then like in the mountains, they'll have a guy who's like he's really good at climbing the mountains, and he's called, and he gets a king of a mountain trophy. So it's like it's not just who gets the fastest time at the end of all the Tour de France. There's all this stuff in between, and then sometimes like guys in the roll, there's roles where guys have in the team where it's like, oh, this guy has to like drop back and like pick up all like the water bottles for the other guys that are actually meant to win the race. And so he has to drop back, get the water bottles, and then speed up to catch them all, and then hand off water bottles and shit.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Also, like I learned that, like, you know, I had no idea how fast they're going. It's like when those guys are on those bikes, they're going like 50 miles an hour, but because they have like chase cars with cameras on it and helicopters following them, you don't realize their speed, but cars are chasing them. So now it makes it sound like, oh, when those guys wreck, that's really bad because they're going at vehicle speeds with absolutely no safety devices other than a helmet.
Yeah, it's like coming off a motorcycle with just like wearing a condom. It's like that's it.
So yeah, James Bond ends up kind of like winning the race, and then he stops the car with the psychologist lady, and then he charms her into sex. You know, presumably they cut away. He has a compartment for like a wine bottle or champagne or something, which I guess would be champagne because you chill champagne, right? I can't remember.
Yes. Yeah, you chill. Yeah, bucket of ice.
So then we cut away from that. Then we cut to Bond shows up at some ball. There's gambling going on. They're playing a baccarat, I guess, which I tried to look it up. It seems to be like vaguely like blackjack, but not.
Yeah.
Like you have a draw card, but like the numbers don't work like blackjack. It's not like 21. It's like everything goes from like 4 to 6 or something like that. I don't know how it works. And then like you don't even necessarily have a chance to like draw. It's just like almost automatic. Like this is what you do at this point or something like that. And usually you play against like the house, but here it has them playing each other. Again, no idea how this works, but you know, that's probably why they switched to Texas Hold'em and Casino Royale because I got so popular at that point that everybody knew what it was.
Yeah.
He recognizes
there were all kinds of jackasses I knew buying like really expensive tables to play, you know, cards, Texas Hold'em and stuff. I was like, what are you doing?
Well, you don't need a green felt table to flip a card over.
Yeah. And also, you don't have any money. You live near me. So not rolling in money.
So what are we gambling with? Well, not money because all the money's on the table. He recognizes Zenya's Ferrari. Yeah, they play baccarat. Like Bond loses the first hand, but then he wins the second hand, but he like wins more money, so she's kind of mad about that. Even though there's not really, I don't know. I don't even know what they're betting. There's just like some stuff happens and then people are mad. So I don't know. But here's where they have a conversation about like opportunities in Russia because like there's like illegal stuff going on and a bunch of sexual innuendos going on here. I can't even remember them because there's like 8 of them in this whole scene. Because like I think she says her name and he's like, oh, on top, okay, oh, that's cool. And then they leave, and then Bond spies on Zinnia, who's like courting an admiral. Which is he like a Canadian admiral or what's going on here? Like, does he even say where they are?
They're in France. This was actually filmed in France. This part of it.
Okay.
And and that's actually a French attack. That's actually the Tiger helicopter is a French attack copter,
Oh, okay.
and they oh, what was it? Because I remember Timothy Dalton, because they basically gave him like the ship and the helicopter to use in their movie and then charge him. They just, that was like a lot of free high dollar production.
Yeah.
But Pierce Brosnan is it's something to do with Greenpeace and tests that the French were doing. He refused to attend the French premiere of this movie because he's against, I don't know, whatever the French do at sea, whaling or something. The French have killed Greenpeace people in the past doing
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
I don't know what it is, but I know Pierce Brosnan's a part of it, and he doesn't want to. He didn't want to have anything to do with the French Navy,
Oh, okay.
but he filmed the scene, so it's like okay.
Yeah, Bond goes after he gets like he has like some special like binoculars where it's like two goes into one. I don't know.
Yeah, they're like ranging binoculars or something weird. I didn't understand exactly what was going on.
But there, yeah, it has a bunch of digital stuff on it. It takes pictures, and then he puts that in his car, and it prints out like a readout of like, here's who this person is, and it has a readout from Moneypenny, which for a minute there I thought it was like Judi Dench reading it, but it wasn't. It was just the Moneypenny character.
Yeah,
or was it not? Yeah, no, it had been Money. Well,
that was Moneypenny.
It was Moneypenny. Okay. Which it didn't seem to be live. It seemed like he put this thing in and this stuff was like readily made. So it's like Moneypenny's just like the computer and the Enterprise or something.
Yeah.
Like that. Let's see here. And then we cut to Onatopp kills the Admiral with sex. Like she crushes him with her thighs.
Yes. And this guy kind of looks happy when he dies.
Oh yeah.
This interesting scene.
I mean, yeah, I think it's interesting to just have a character where it's like you're gonna have like sex stuff in a Bond movie, so it's like let's have him kill people with sex. That'll be cool, which makes it a very interesting bad guy for a Bond movie. That's kind of new. Which they just have her be like a sadist here, where it's like, no, what gets her off isn't the sex, it's the killing people.
Yeah.
Then you see a hand that steals the Admiral's ID card. Then we cut to morning. Bond sneaks on the boat looking for clues. He gets attacked by like some pool hand or something. I don't know, just some random bad guy. He like sees his reflection and he kind of like pops away and hits the guy. Then we intercut with like there's somebody impersonating the Admiral, and Zinnia's there, and they're at like a military helicopter demonstration. It's a stealth chopper that's like EMP like resistant and stuff like that, so that'll be important for later on. Zinnia shoots the pilots, then her and like the impersonator steal a chopper in the middle of the demonstration. Bond like is trying to like run up, but he gets like obviously tackled by military guards. So that makes sense. Then we cut to titles: Space Weapons Control Center, Severnia, or how do you play that? Yeah, Severnia, Russia. Severnaya? Okay.
Yeah, that's how you say it in the movie. So. Oh, by the way, the Eurocopter Tiger is a real attack helicopter.
Oh, okay.
And it is a stealth capable. It doesn't say anything about EMP, but it is a French and German helicopter, and they've made 100 of them. So it was obviously a huge success.
It's all
very, very, very expensive.
The last helicopter you'll ever need.
Yep. The last one you'll ever pay for, that's for sure.
So we cut to inside it's like a giant satellite dish outside. We cut to the inside, and it's a Russian version of like the War Games room.
Kind of.
It still looks cool.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of got a lot more concrete and carved out wall stuff going on here. Which I wonder, because like it's pretty obvious that like the later on room they use in like the third act is basically just this set redressed in a different way. But they do a good job of hiding that. So.
Yeah, unless you know how movies are made and you've seen this before, you wouldn't notice it. But it's like, oh yeah, this is the same set.
Here we get Isabella Scorupco. She plays Natalia Semenova, which I'm guessing they put Nova in her name to make it sound like supernova or something. I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably.
She's like a space weapons programmer or something.
She space guidance system program.
Okay. Yeah, they say that later on. So
Yeah.
she has to put up with her sexist colleague, who's Alan Cumming, who plays Boris Grushenko.
Now, is this the first time in film like evil computer nerd is powerful? Is a powerful character? Because I think this was something that like started with this movie and then it just escalated up. Because before this, it was like he's like the guy in War Games, but evil.
Yeah.
Cunning, whereas before it was always the guy in War Games, like kind of bumbly nerds that like have power but don't really know how to use it. Where this guy's like, no, I know how to manipulate computers and I'm evil.
Yeah,
and I'm Russian.
Yeah, usually, yeah. Well, usually hacker characters are the heroes because there's always something like weird about them, and they're kind of always the underdog. It's like, this is why I'm a hacker, because like nobody will accept me in normal society.
Yeah.
Especially in the movie Hackers. Also here you get a blend of like basically like that's not how hacking works, where it's like you wouldn't have all this elaborate UI and stuff like that for hackers. It would just be a console command. That'd be it. Here it's a combination. It's like, yes, it's the weird picture stuff inside the console command thing, so it's okay. Yeah, he has something where he makes like a picture of Natalia, but like with bigger breasts and like a bikini, and like she has to enter a password to get into her own computer. Which I don't know. Would that make a counterpart to Bond somehow?
Yeah, kind of.
I don't know, not really.
Well, because James Bond, look, how James Bond acts is how women want to be sexually harassed. How this guy acts is how most people do sexually harass women.
It's like that meme of the handsome guy asking the lady how to work, and she's like, "You're so sweet," and then the like the kind of fat guy asks her out. He's like, "HR."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so people want to be, sexually harassed by Bond, but not Boris.
And then they show off Boris like hacking the U.S. Department of Justice. So we have hacker showing off his like hacker stealth program, which they call it like a spike. Again, they don't explain it. It's just a hacker thing. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, most people wouldn't. I wouldn't know.
No,
I wouldn't know to this day. If he's like, "This is how it works," I'd be like, "Yeah, cool."
I mean, like, I don't know. I'm not a big hacker, but the stuff I know, I'd say that like if you want the most accurate hacking, you go to the TV show what's it called?
Mr. Robot.
Mr. Robot. I wanted to say Bad Robot. I was getting that wrong. No, Mr. Robot is the most authentic hacking program that's ever been made. So,
yeah, because that's like a lot of scripted, pre-programmed stuff, and just a lot of like brute force, like try to get in through the editing protocols or something. Like you don't really have full access, but you have enough access to get what you need and then get out. That's what it seemed like it always really was. It wasn't this like direct line of, oh, now I have the menu, search for secret weapons. Like it doesn't really work that way.
No, like, yeah, you're not going to get it like, yeah, you're not going to get a convenient UI to do this stuff. It's all going to be weird, abstract back end. Like you just got to write in commands and know your file structure and stuff like that. And then execute it, and then also know how the program works by using the correct keywords and all that crap.
See, I could only hack if it involved a mouse and it said secret files, click. But there's no graphical user interface for like, oh, you've reached the hacking menu. Congratulations, you're in. Like, I don't know.
Which is why there's a very unique thing with technology and interface stuff, is because like computers used to not even have keyboards.
Yeah. Fed paper cards into them.
Paper cards or just dip switches and shit.
Okay.
And then like it would calculate a thing, and then it would print out stuff, and then you'd look at it, and a smart person would look at it as like, I know what this is doing. And no normal person could fucking do that whatsoever. That's insane. Because a lot of like the like high-end simulation stuff that we do now, we can do like we can render it in a fairly reasonable amount of time, and then you can see it acted out in 3D.
Mm-hmm.
And they could do that shit in the 50s, but it wouldn't be rendered in 3D. It would just be numbers on a fucking printout sheet.
Yeah, it's be like, did it do it? And all of a sudden you'd hear, "Dan, dan, dan," and people would pull this sheet up and they'd be like, look, it's so exciting. It's like, what are they talking about? Make it talk to me.
And so yeah, like a lot of technology in the last 30 years is just making things a graphical interface so normal people could use computer programs. So now we've gone so far that people just actually don't know how a computer works. Like
Yeah.
going in the back end using consoles and stuff like that. Like, because like a lot of like Gen Z, like they have a lot touch screen stuff and iPad stuff. It's like, well, how do you do computer programming with that stuff? And it's like, oh, you don't have any idea. Because like, I mean, because we were back in the day where you had to like load, like you put like a disc in and you'd have to go to the right drive and put like CD / install and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
And people just, modern computers don't make you do that stuff. They make it a lot easier where you can just plug and play. But all that back end stuff is always there. It never goes away. It's just not surfaced for the computer user because it's not easy to use. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is a lot of this is just Bond coming into the 21st century, because I don't know how much computers were in other Bond movies up until that point.
They were always like devices and suitcases that did dangerous things. Like this can launch all the missiles, or this can shut down the power grid, or this. But it was very abstract. It was like, oh, how do you do it? I don't know. Some nerd solders it in, and then it does it. Okay, well, we must keep it from the bad guys.
Then Boris goes outside to smoke, and then Zinnia and the colonel from the prologue. Was it Orlanov or Auranov? Was it
Orlanov? Yeah, let me look it up.
Orlanov. It's like Ourumov or Ormov. There it's right.
Yeah.
They show up in the stealth helicopter, which give this me seeing the movie piecemeal. For a minute there, I thought, and maybe I was confusing this with Mission Impossible, but for some reason I thought Ormov was like just Sean Bean in a mask the whole time.
Oh.
I was like, oh wait, no, they're two separate people.
It's gonna just pull it off.
Yeah. For some reason that was in my mind. It's like, oh wait, that never happens. I guess because I was seeing a lot of Mission Impossible in this movie, even though this precedes that. I was looking for that, I guess. They're gonna test fire the GoldenEye. The colonel gets some special keys, which is elaborate. Opens up. It's like a literal like kind of eye opening thing. And then the thing is golden. It has like a red, like I don't know, like red jewel in it or something like that.
I'm assuming it's a red, like a ruby of something insane like that.
Yeah.
Something that would cost like $100 million, and it's like, oh, we're going to use this to launch a missile. Or
I don't know what the ruby's doing, because it's not like, because all it does is activate a satellite. So I'm guessing it's just supposed to be, one, just look cool, but two, if you want to give it some credit, it's just some elaborate encryption system that nobody can you can't just use this out as like some elaborate key.
It basically serves the same function that in Raiders of the Lost Ark, the staff that he puts in the ground, and the sun shines through and it focuses a beam, and it's like, that's where the Ark is. This essentially does a more modern version of that, and that's it. It's like, this is cool. Here's this big credit card thing with a $1 billion stone of some kind. It's like, yeah, well, they do this in Russia. They got all the minerals and wealth in the world, a bunch of smart people, but for some reason their country sucks then and now. So it's sad. Here's your ruby card, though. Have fun.
The colonel gets the special keys, and then Zinnia just kills everyone in the room to a sexual delight.
Yeah, she acts like she's like having sex while she's firing an AK-47.
Yeah.
And she's like a Dutch actress, right? The lady who plays her, what's her name? Famke?
Oh, yeah, Famke. Why do I say her name weirdly European?
Yeah, I don't know how to say. I'm a stupid
Famke
American.
Jensen.
Famke Jensen.
Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Isn't it?
Jensen? Jan?
Janssen? No, I always heard Jensen, but it could have been Janssen if it's like, if she's
Janssen. I don't know. She's a cool actress.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful woman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And she went from this to like she was Jean Grey in the X-Men franchise, and then
That's right. I knew I remembered her from some. I was thinking she was in some science fiction thing for like 3 movies.
oh yeah, she keeps talking. I think she's still acting and stuff like that because she's
Yeah.
aged incredibly well. Because she's always like 10 years older than you actually think she is.
Yeah, well, it's one of those European chicks that works out and like eats carrots. Yeah,
Gets her blood replaced every year.
yeah. Like, how do they do that? It's like no corn syrup, dude. Oh,
um, where was I? Go back to the notes. Oh yeah, so they aim the GoldenEye at their own location. Then we cut to a satellite unfolds in space, which this stuff looks old. Like these models and effects look old. Like there's
yeah.
some,
It's really old practical effects, kind of done in an old style too.
yeah,
That's what's weird about it. Is like, oh, this reminds me of like oh, what's my other weird James Bond movie that I love? Oh, Moonraker type
yeah,
effects, but it's like we're 20 years later.
yeah.
Uh,
um,
but let's not be too hard on him because the guy who did the visual effects of this movie died before it came out. He actually had cancer while he was on set, and he's like, "I'm just gonna soldier on because that's the British way."
I mean, yeah, there's kind of a mix of effects here. Some of them are really good. Like some of this miniature stuff looks amazing, and some of it looks like,
Yeah.
okay, you could have done a second take on that. It's like, well, that would have cost $15 million. Like, all right, good on you.
We get the point.
Then an alarm gets triggered by a dying person, and then like gets shot up by Xenia. And Talia's in hiding.
Yeah, she went to get like a cup of coffee or tea or whatever they drink there,
Yeah,
and she was in the little kitchen vestibule when the massacre first happened,
yeah,
and she doesn't know that she just thinks Boris went outside for a smoke. So
yeah. And then she I think she moves some, like they hear like Xenia's after her, and then she ends up like shooting like the ceiling, thinking that she's hiding up in there, but really she's like hiding in the cabinet down below or something like that. Which again, that's probably just like, it really doesn't necessarily make, I don't know, because they don't put like, I don't think you see like a thing scantily askewed to like think that she was up there or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure they're just relying on Die Hard. Is like, you remember Die Hard? She shoots the thing.
oh no, they show her going up there and like pulling that cover off that.
Oh, she does? Okay.
Yeah, but then like she knocks something over. I forget, something happens.
The
Like
tea
you think,
is knocked on the ground, but then it ends up being like that's just kind of a ruse for, and she hides in like the under like the kitchen sink or whatever. So
yeah, because not everyone's John McClane. So I doubt that woman could actually like pull her body weight just like free air up into that vent.
Well, I mean, she couldn't even access the vent from where she was, so
Yeah.
she'd mostly just be going up into the drop ceiling, which I don't know. I've never been in a drop ceiling. I imagine there's a lot
They
of
hold
places
no
to grab
weight.
on. Okay,
No.
that's what I'm going.
Yeah,
Then,
if
like,
you don't screw the can lights in at the correct height, they'll just start to bulge down just from and a can light, like without a light bulb in it, weighs like less than a pound. But yeah, they'll start to bulge down if you put them in wrong. I know I put one in wrong.
And also, usually that diffuser they're looking at, that isn't connected to. I mean, that will be connected to your ducting, but that thing usually has. Oh no, I completely forget the term for it. It's connected with.
The cross hatching stuff.
It's like, what the hell is it? It's like insulated. It's just an insulated plastic tube.
Yeah.
Like it's not like solid. What the hell is it called? Yeah, it's just like stuff with insulation. It's got two, and it's just plastic, and so it's just flappy. So
Yeah, it's not made to support like 100 pounds.
No, and there'd be no way to crawl in there. So
yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. The magic of movies is like people can magically crawl in air ducts and stuff like that. Now working on air ducts is like, oh, you'd never do that. One, you couldn't fit in there unless it was like some industrial scale stuff. Two, it probably wouldn't hold your weight crawling around in there.
Yeah. And 3, to access it, you'd need the strength of a chimpanzee. And it's like people aren't strong like that. Some people are strong, but not everyone.
Yeah, and sometimes that stuff like takes weird turns and directions that there would be no way you could get through. But for movie magic, it's just what happens when you put somebody in this duct. Um, let's see here. Ah, yeah. So the Xenia and the Colonel take off in the chopper before the GoldenEye fires. Then we kind of intercut here. Bond shows up at the office and sees Moneypenny. They like flirt for a bit, which I don't know if this is like a new Moneypenny or I think.
Yeah, it's the new one.
Okay, I didn't know if she was in the like Brosnan ones or whatever, because sometimes they have like carryovers with this stuff.
No, the only guy that carried over was Q.
Okay.
Because M and Moneypenny and all is all new people. Because this was like Judi Dench was introduced. This is the first time she played M.
Yeah.
And she did it for like the next 2 decades. Well, not just that. She does a lot of work, but yeah.
They flirt for a bit, and they say something like Moneypenny says like you've never had me. And also here she says like I should report you to HR. And he's like, oh, like would I be in trouble then? So this is them modernizing Bond, where it's like, oh yes, I'm being womanizing, but like we both know about it. So like wink, wink, like it's a problem, but don't worry about it. It's not like you want Bond to tackle those issues necessarily. So, MI6 has located the helicopter and Severnaya. How do you spell that? Keep on saying Severnaya, but Severnia.
Oh. Which one is it? Yeah, hold on. Let me dun, 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 dun. Yes, Severnaya. Just say Severnaya. Yeah.
And here Dame Judi Dench shows up. I'm sure she was a dame at the time, but she became that way. And she's the new M. And then we intercut with Severnaya, and the Russian fighter jets show up, and they're scouting the area. And then the GoldenEye fires an EMP burst at Severnaya, which for some reason causes like a massive electrical overload that blows the place up.
Yeah. Yes, GoldenEye is a fictional weapon that would be technically classified as what you'd call a hemp do. Mean high energy electromagnetic pulse, or NIMP, which would be nuclear powered electromagnetic pulse weapon. But see, those, when we do those, we really made that into quite a thing. There was an experiment we did called Starfish Prime, which was like the biggest nuclear bomb ever detonated in space, because we wanted to see like how do you blanket a country with electromagnetic pulse stuff, and that was the one we did. And then the Russians did one. I forget what it was. I think they were called the Aurora experiments, because electromagnetic pulses, as Hollywood says they work, is they like destroy all your electronics at once. They destroy car ignitions, computers, watches, everything. They don't really do that because there's not enough, because an electromagnetic pulse like creates this huge blast of energy across the spectrum, and it supposedly shorts everything out. There's not enough, like your computers and phones and cars would just shut off. They wouldn't do that. But what it really screws up is your power grid. So it'll conduct through the lines and just blow back into the power plants and stuff and just fry your power grids. That's what EMP weapons do. But the reason this thing's so wildly effective is this isn't a broad area. This is a directed energy. So it's a focused EMP blast, which could conceivably like destroy all the electronics and cause the place to burst into flames. And well, the real reason though it goes down is because the Russian fighter jets that were dispatched to this base to see why someone hit the alarm, like one of those crashed into the building.
Yeah.
Which that led to a lot of like secondary damage.
But things were exploding on the inside.
Yeah.
Which
because Hollywood EMP says that all electronics just explode when they're hit. Suddenly, microchips take on the explosive potential of dynamite for some unknown reason.
Yeah, the explosions are going off, but it's still well lit. The lights didn't flicker one bit.
Yeah, no.
But it was a cool, like, head first dive. Like, she's trying to steal home. She does.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it was a stunt lady or just a stunt guy in a wig, but it's a really cool dive. It's like, that must have hurt, or they had padding on the ground. I don't know.
Yeah, they were probably jumping into a pad there.
Yeah. I mean, that'd be the safe thing to do, but you never know.
They wanted to, and Star Wars, Teller wanted Reagan to make weapons like this. It was going to be called a nuclear power neutron pump. But they said, yeah, what would that, and that, because that would basically canvas the Soviet Union with radiation, but it wouldn't like destroy. It was like a neutron bomb, but they wanted to like focus it and stuff. And it was like, oh yeah, the evil everyone, but no one could make it work. Or it was be such a significant investment of money and time. It's like, well, this isn't going to do anything, but just show everyone that we are evil.
But also when the GoldenEye goes off, everything is saturated with like that. You remember like in Terminator, like the time travel bubble and everything gets covered in electricity? That's the kind of electricity that everything gets covered with here.
Yes.
So yeah, the fighter jets get covered in that, and so they like two of them crash into each other, and one crashes into the satellite dish station. And then they show the helicopter flying around. It's got the electrical thing going on, but it's not affected by it. So it's, you know, they explained that early in the movie. So, you know, it's fine. It's a stealth helicopter, so they can go anywhere they want without telling anybody, and it's not affected by EMPs.
So essentially, the former Soviet Union has set off a huge nuclear weapon in outer space that would be detected by everyone on the planet simultaneously.
Well, yeah, the same moment later that like two, like an American satellite and one of the British satellites got knocked out by this, which I guess also it knocked out itself, which they don't necessarily say that outright, but they say like, oh no, there's another GoldenEye. It's like, oh, these are one-shot affairs. this thing can't rearm.
Yep.
Then we cut to the inside of the satellite building, and the roof caves in because she's like yelling at like an automatic door thing because it's, you know, implying it has voice command, which I don't think we actually ever saw it, but that's, you know, it's implied. The roof caves in like because it's part of the satellite dish, and so this allows her like to crawl out of the facility. We also come back to the MI6, and they basically explain what an EMP is to the audience. Because these people would not explain this to each other, but it's fine. It's a movie. We're going to explain this. People have no idea what just happened. Bond suspects an insider, and then he's also the first one to notice Natalia is alive on the satellite image. And then Natalia finds some sled dogs, which is kind of supposed to be like, oh yes, like she'll be saved now. Which I'm trying to think of, you know, again, you know, putting reality in a Bond doesn't make sense. But I'm trying to put myself in that thing. It's like, well, we don't know who she is. We don't know if she has experience with sled dogs. But if I just happened upon sled dogs in my, like, I wouldn't know what to do. Like that doesn't scream to me like she's saved now. Whatever, you know. She's Russian. They just.
Well, I mean, she isn't. Yeah, she's in Siberia on an island off the Russian continent. So. Yeah, she's going to get on the sled dogs and get on a ship and then get back to St. Petersburg, which would be like, I think the equivalent length of traveling across the United States twice. You know, it's like that's really huge way away.
And a skirt and high heels.
Yep. And by the way, like, you know, the psychotic general in charge of the Russian space defense is after you.
Well, not yet. He doesn't know about her yet, so. So that being the end of Act 1, so now we know like what the GoldenEye is and what it can do, and we'll find out how it's going to be used later on. Act 2, we got Bond and M strategize about like who did this. Here's what they suspect that I always heard as Janus Group, but she says Janus Group, so I don't know. I've always heard Janus because this is the two-faced god. So
yeah, I just say Janus because I'm just a dumbass American. So.
Also, I figured a British person would use a hard J because usually, you know, that's like, you know, what romantic languages that use like the kind of Y for J's and stuff. I don't know. I can't remember. Here's where I have like kind of M is like battling with Bond because, you know, he doesn't like her because, well, he doesn't say it out loud, but she's like, you just think I'm a bean counter. And then she says, well, I think you're a sexist, misogynistic dinosaur that's a relic of the Cold War. And Bond's like, oh, you know me so well. But here also like she like threatens like, yo, I'm not afraid to send men off to their death, so you're gonna go after Zinnia. So he's like, oh, thanks. But they're kind of what they kind of like soften her a bit here. She like her last thing she says is like, James, do come back alive. So so she's not heartless. Which I never really remember like any of the M characters anyway, so I don't know like their through line or how they're supposed to be. Like Judi Dench is the only M I know throughout the Bond franchise.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, because M is kind of like, M is kind of like the stuffy British establishment guy until Judi Dench. She like expands the character, but M is always kind of like, oh, he's your typical British like bureaucrat. He just runs like MI6 or whatever, and it's always that's the guy, because that's always supposed to be like James Bond's always supposed to be the foil to that.
Yeah.
M is not, because M is like, oh, he's the establishment, the upper crust, the guy who gets into high position, and the British government is always someone who's went to the right schools and knows the right family. And James Bond's just like a homeless kid that worked his way through the military. It was too valuable a killer to let go, and he's like, yeah, he always messes with M. But so that's kind of his place in the universe.
M's kind of like the more like elegant version of like the angry sergeant in like American action movies. Like, you blew up half of downtown. Like, but here it's M going, Bond, that cost $100 million. He's like, huh.
Yeah, the CIA equivalent of that would be like, Gust of Rakatos from Charlie Wilson's War. Like, that's our M. It's like, I could stare at her all fucking day, but I can't talk to you at all unless you get her out of the room. That's our guy.
We have title St. Petersburg, Russia. There's a board meeting with Colonel Oramov. Here he's claiming like Serbian separatists were responsible for
Siberia.
This. Oh, Siberian. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
He tenders his resignation, but then they don't accept it. It's like, no, we don't have to go that far. But
this is Russia now, not the Soviet Union. There'll be no trips to Gulag. Your family's safe. But he really wants out because he wants to go spend his money.
Yeah. Here's where he gets wind that Natalia's still alive, and so he's worried about that. So now that's his next goal. It's like, oh, I got to get Natalia and kill her, or whatever. Then we have time with Q and Bond, and this is a very wacky sequence that seems almost like straight out of like Get Smart or a Naked Gun movie.
That happens in almost every Bond movie.
Yeah. Like, you see him come up because it's like, because there's still, he played Q in all the other ones, right? Or has he been Q the whole time? Has he always been Q?
I think so, at least as long back as I can remember.
Okay. Because I remember they kind of had that kind of sad transition where they got John Cleese and this guy were at the same time, because this guy was had bad health at the time, and so they kind of replaced him with John Cleese, but it was like kind of sad.
Yeah.
And I don't even, because I think Q is in the later Craig movies, and I don't even think I've seen a movie that had Q in it, or maybe he's in it for like a moment, but like he's like
he's in there. He's played by a really young guy.
Yeah. But yeah, here we see Q. He's like in a cast, and he's like, it's like, oh, like you have a nice trip or something like that, and he's like, I forget the joke. He says I was hunting, and like the cast ends up being a rocket launcher, and so it fires a rocket off in a closed room where nobody dies, because this is all humorous. I put Bond gets his new BMW, but really it's just showing off. Like, he doesn't drive it till like the third act, and he only drives it for like a car commercial. Like, he doesn't use it at all. They have other deadly gadgets shown. We've got the exploding pin. There's like a phone booth that has like an inflatable thing that like the guy gets like trapped in the phone booth, and he's like carried away later on. Bond grabs a sandwich, and he's like, what's this do? And he's like, don't touch that. That's my lunch.
It's like this huge hero sandwich. Yeah. It's 3 foot long sandwich.
And I cannot think of what other funny stuff happens in this one, but it's like, because I don't think I think he gives him the watch, and I think he says it has a laser in it, but they don't show it off or anything. He shows off the belt that has like the.
Oh, it fires the grappling hook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which comes into use once later on in the movie. So, which I'm like, does he have two belts? Because he uses that belt to do the thing, but he takes it off to use it. It's like, are his pants falling down, or is he just, he's a British agent, like those pants are fit right to him. He doesn't even need the belt.
Yeah, those are made to fit him.
Tailor made.
This guy's doing like crazy action fighting in like in like leather soled shoes.
That's what I always thought was crazy. Is like police officers, like in their police uniform, they have like those, like I don't know what shoes they have, but they always look uncomfortable and like you can't run in them. I don't know if you can, but they look like you can't run in them.
Yeah, they're not
like,
sneakers; they're like work shoes.
Yeah, but I don't know how they feel, but like you see them trying to chase down people in like sneakers, and it's like that's got to be hard. You got to be a real athlete to chase somebody down in those shoes. And also comically, sometimes you see them not be able to do that. So that's what I'm wondering about. Then we cut to Bond lands at an airport and he meets a CIA contact, Jack Wade, played by Joe Don Baker, which this is comical because literally 2 movies ago he was an evil American selling weapons in the Timothy Dalton Bond movie, Living Daylights.
And he calls him the same thing every time he meets him. Whether he was, because he was Brad Whitaker was the arms dealer in the Living Daylights.
Yeah.
And then in GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies, he's like, "Oh, great, another stiff ass Brit." He says that every movie. Character. You always know who Joe Don Baker is, and it's fun to see him.
Mitchell himself.
Oh yeah.
One of the best MST3K episodes.
That was a good one.
I think there's 2 of them. He's in another movie that they did. I can't remember what it's called. I don't think it's another Mitchell movie. It's like something where he plays like a Texas Texas Ranger that goes to like, what's that island? Malta. He goes to like Malta to like solve a crime or something like that, and it's a ridiculous movie. Yeah, Wade's car breaks down because he's just using like a Russian car or something like that, which here he comically fixes it with just a sledgehammer. He gets some, he gets like a wrench and a screwdriver in there, but really it's the sledgehammer that wins the day.
Yeah, because he's using a wrench or a sledgehammer to tap a screwdriver, and he's always like making James Bond hand him tools. He's like, "Give me that wrench, Jimbo. Give me that hammer, Jimbo. No, the big one." All right, and then he just like swings it over his head, and for some reason the engine starts. It's like, okay. I've actually seen
that. They give info back and forth about like who he'll be up against. I think this is where Valentine gets mentioned, and he talks about how he shot him in the leg or something.
Yes.
Also, they're looking for an armored train that moves around the country because they're talking about like how they used to hide nuclear weapons this way in Russia, which I don't know if that's how they did it or not. But
yeah, they did. We can talk about that when we get to that point. I have all kinds of like Cold War subheading.
Then we cut to Natalia gets hold of a computer pretending to be like, I don't know, like some sort of like school procurement person.
Buyer for the foreign schools for yeah, because like the Swiss school in Russia wants to buy computers, like IBM type compute, the most profligate computers they had at that time. All those IBM computers that were everywhere.
Yeah,
those kind. But yeah,
so she like basically tricks him so she can get internet access, and she makes contact with Boris. Then we cut to Natalia meets Boris at a church, but the Zinnia is there and to capture her. So that's when they figure out like, oh, Boris is one with the bad guys. Then we cut to Bond holds up a Valentinian Zukovsky, played by Robbie Coltrane, who you most know from
great Robbie Coltrane.
Which you probably know him mostly as I forget, in the Harry
Hagrid?
Potter movie, Hagrid in the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah.
But he's a British actor, so he's been in hundreds of things. So at least I think he's a British actor.
Scottish, but yeah.
Okay. He's been in British produced television.
Oh yeah, he's been in some great.
I mostly know him as Hagrid, but do you have things that you remember him from?
Cracker.
Okay.
He was basically a police. Um, he's a Scottish guy, but he was born in Ireland. He's an alcoholic, chain smoking, obese gambler, and he is a criminal investigator
Huh.
and like master of interrogation.
Huh.
And it's basically how he breaks. He's kind of like if Sherlock Holmes was a fat alcoholic guy. I'm not just saying that because that was like the Robbie Coltrane character was
Yeah.
like, I'm this guy, and it's some of like, I don't know where you can find Cracker anymore. I remember I used to watch it all the time on demand because it was on like 10 years. It was like 10 years worth of these. It's like the darkest police procedural you'll ever see. Because it's just everyone's. Yeah, that's when I think Robbie Coltrane, I think Cracker. So, but I know he was in the Harry Potter stuff too.
And he died recently last year. So
Yeah.
Um. So yeah, Bond's holding him up. Then Bond gets held up by one of his minions. Also in the background, we have Minnie Driver as like a Russian singer dancer wearing like a red cowboy hat, and she sings.
Singing "Stand by Your Man" in a terrible, weird Russian accent. I think it was her first movie role ever.
Yeah, it's an early role for her. Yeah,
She's the incredibly hot Minnie Driver, is like this amazingly beautiful woman who I think right after this was doing Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, that probably. I mean, that's her most famous thing. So
Yeah,
it's here. It's like such a like what she became later on. This would be such a low thing for somebody to start. But hey,
she said she was grateful for the job because she needed money real bad. She said
yeah.
she got $9,000 or something, or whatever, $900. I don't know,
Probably
50
getting,
pounds. Who knows? A
probably
flagon of mead, whatever they pay those people.
And this is played on TV a bunch, so probably gets like a $5 check every year from this. Or
Yeah.
Bond and Valentine have a history. That Bond shot him in the leg. They mentioned he has a limp. He makes a deal with Valentine to get to Janice, where he like sets something up where it's like, all right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna have a bomb in a limousine, and then like your guy's gonna take the money, and then this never happens. But whatever.
It was basically the payoff to him, but we don't see it.
And then here's where he talks about some story of like the Russian Cossacks surrendering to the British, and then the British betray them, and then like they're sent to die by Stalin.
Yeah, that all really happened, by the way. That's a real thing.
Okay, I never knew about this.
Yeah.
Because like this is the first time like I'm really paying attention to this movie. It's like, oh, I thought he just like betrayed Britain for money. I didn't know if there was a familial like revenge thing going on here.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I actually didn't look this up, but there was a group. I don't know, they called them Chetniks, or there were people that fought like basically as native fighters. But they fought on the side of the Germans because Stalin didn't like the Cossacks, and he was like one of the ethnic groups he was singling out. So that they're basically fighting with one evil group against another because they were going to be wiped out, by Stalin. And then when they surrendered, when they got captured as units by the Allies, they wanted to like, no, we'll go to your countries or whatever because they'll just kill us in Russia. But Stalin, of course, wanted them back because he's Stalin, and that's his thing is I want to hurt the people that pissed me off. And so the British basically like, yeah, we just took them back and dropped them off. And there was a lot of them like stole guns from the British and shot themselves and shot their families before they got off the train. So because they knew what the Russians were going to do to them. And this is a really dark story. It really happened. And it happened to a lot of different. The reason he's called a Linz Cossack is that's the city where they turned them over to the Russians, the city of Linz. But there was a lot of stories with the Cossacks being turned over to the Russians at the end of the Second World War, mainly by the British. British ended up capturing a lot of them during the surrender. But the sad thing was the British, like they actually made agreements like, no, we'll keep you safe. You're fine, just to calm them down, and then just turned around and gave them to the Russians. Like, yep, sorry. So it was actually like it wasn't like there was unrealistic expectations on the side of the Cossacks. Like, no, the British will take care of us. No, the British said they would take care of them, and they did not. So Yeah.
Okay,
But
yeah,
that
so,
would be this guy's parents. So
yeah, so he'd be a child watching his parents being slaughtered or whatever.
yeah.
Because that's what they say, like, you know, because that's what he says later on. It's like, we're both orphans, James.
Yep.
um, then we cut to Bond swimming in an octagon pool with a bunch of columns in it, which I don't know if this is a real place or just a set they built.
No, it's a real place in St. Petersburg, Russia, as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
Because they love those bathhouses in Russia.
Oh, yeah. He catches Zinnia spying on him. They have a sex fight, which is the only way I can describe it.
So weird.
Because it's like, oh, you're killing me, but then they make out for a bit, but then like he's biting his lip, and you know, and then he's like, they slam her up against the wall like it's a wrestling match.
And actually broke her rib during the
Oh,
film.
damn.
Well, I guess this director is known to be like a make it real kind of
Yeah.
guy. He's like, I want to believe that this is going on. The wall was padded. It was made out of rubber and plastic. It wasn't the stone wall it looked like, but it still wasn't padded enough because I think she weighed like 90 pounds.
Yeah.
And, Pierce Brosnan's a big guy, he's a strong guy, a fit guy. He slammed her into the wall and broke her. She didn't know it at the time. It just started to hurt later. And this has happened to her twice in other movies doing stunts where she's broken her ribs. So it could just be a thing with how she falls or the fact that she just doesn't weigh much and there's not much to her. You know, there's the reason like NFL linemen weigh 300 pounds. It's like, it's because they got to take hits.
Yeah, there's a Japanese wrestler. Well, she wrestles in America. Her character is Asuka, but she talks about like her like kind of body makeup in kind of weirdly straightforward way, where it's like, you know, I could be Jack and have no body fat, but like I need to have this correct measure of body fat, muscles, and stuff like that to take these hits. So that's why I'm not jacked, because if I have no body fat, I have no cushioning for the falls.
Yeah. Yeah, you're all just muscle and bone. It's like, well, the bone's the hardest thing. It's going to break first.
So they have their sex fight. He gets her at gunpoint again, and then he has her take him to jail.
Let's not forget he puts her ass on the Savamar, which is the thing that heats the steam up in the room, and that's why she lets go, because he basically gives her a second-degree burn.
And then another guy shows up for a moment just for Bond to just kind of punch him out real quick. You know, there's a lot of guys just coming out of nowhere for Bond to just duck aside and just punch him out. Then we cut to, it's like a graveyard of Soviet statues.
Yep. Real place, by the way.
Oh, that's a real place, huh? Okay.
Yeah, I used to be able to buy those. Like when the Soviet Union was falling, people wanted those in their living room.
Huh.
I would too, actually, if I had the money. It's like, yeah, I want a big Marx or a big Lenin head, like head behind me. But now that stuff's like crazy expensive. But yeah,
it looks cool because it's like, it looks like some sort of like it's Batman set or something like that, where it's just like,
that's like that brutalist architecture.
Yeah.
That all the faces are real blocky looking, and everyone's like looking to the sky in our socialist future that's going to be great. And it died. It died the death of greed and corruption, like everything, like all great nations fall.
Zinnia's in the car driving. Bond just knocks her out. Just pops her in the back of the head, because that's back in the time where you could just do those things and it's fine.
Yeah. They didn't realize it's like, oh, you have to like bounce her brain off her skull and give her a concussion.
He walks into the statue garden or whatever, graveyard. The helicopters are in the background, so it's like, oh, something's up. And then Alex walks out of the shadows, back from the dead. He's Janus, so he's the Two-Faced guy.
Yeah. And half his face is burnt.
Yeah, which I thought that's like, oh, that's because he got shot in the face, but it's because Bond lowered the timer so he had less time to get out, so it's a burn from the plant blowing up. Alec does his Bond villain backstory thing where he explains, basically his whole character, because it's been a while since we've seen him, so we got to catch up the audience. It's like, wait, why are you doing this? It's been 9 years. This where he explains the whole like betrayed Russian things by the British. Um, Bond gets shot with a trank dart and passes out.
Yeah.
Then we cut to, it's like it fades in like slowly. We hear Natalia just screaming as loud as she can.
It's actually cool. It's
Yeah.
it's a kind of a cool scene.
Yeah, it's jarring. She wants Bond to wake up, and Natalia and Bond are tied to the chopper seats, and the missiles are like set to blow up the chopper, like not just blow up in place, but fire off and come back, which I don't think those missiles can do. I don't think they have the.
They don't have enough turning surface to like
Yeah,
do a 180-degree turn.
but it's a cool thing.
I learned that from Tom Clancy. So.
Yeah, yeah. Bond, here's where it's kind of funny because like I guess he just got hit with a trank dart, but Bond he's tied up, so Bond has to use his head. He's just pounding buttons with his head as hard as he can to make things happen, which is kind of cool. It's like that's what you got. And here the helicopter has an ejection seat. Actually, I don't remember this scene, so I don't. So I didn't because I remember I was talking about that scene I created with like the ejecting he kills a bunch of people by like the blades killing all the people around him. So I don't even remember. So I didn't even remember this scene happening. But so yeah, they're ejected from the scene. This is more reminiscent of the second Die Hard movie, where he uses the ejection seat on the ground to escape the exploding plane.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're thrown free from the explosion. Bond gets free somehow, and then he lets Natalia go, and she does not appreciate it. She thinks he's a bad guy as well, because they've never met before. Like he really doesn't even know who she is. He just like it's like, oh, you're, because later he says you're the lady on the Clark crawled out of on the satellite dish. So that's like so they don't even know each other here. And then some Russian military shows up and arrests them. We cut to Bond and Natalia are thrown in a locked room together. It's not exactly a prison. It's just kind of an interrogation room or something, but there's only one way in. They kind of explain themselves to each other. He says he's Bond, and she says like, actually I can't remember what she says, but like basically they explain like themselves to each other, where it's like, hey, this is the bad thing that's happening. Like, oh, you were the one in the satellite image. She's like, oh, okay. So you were spying on me. It's like, well, I am a spy. The defense minister shows up looking to like execute them or get information and or both. Apparently there's another GoldenEye out there, which I guess requires another satellite dish on the ground and another satellite in space. So
yeah.
And then Oromov comes in and he shoots the minister and the guard, and then he starts talking out loud about how like he's gonna frame them for like killing the minister and the guard and stuff like that. But then they're able to fight their way out of the complex, or at least out of that room. They topple over the archives to block the door one way, but then there's some guards coming in the other way, which is kind of exactly what happened in the first scene of the movie.
Yeah. It's the same guards. They're wearing the same uniforms.
And the same colonel.
Yeah.
Natalia,
he's a general.
Oh yeah. Natalia like steps on some weird grate and it falls through, and then they end up like capturing her, and the Bond uses his gadget swing to get through, just like flies through a window and gets to the outside. The soldiers take Natalia away in a car, but Bond gives chase in a fucking tank.
Now, there's only one of us on this podcast who's actually driven a tank. You think what he's doing is possible?
I mean, it's in the movie. I'm not sure if that's it's a real tank.
That's that's a T-55 they got from a British museum to use, and they filmed it in St. Petersburg.
I mean, the thing I don't know, I mean, they did it, so I don't know, like, they're drifting the tank, which seems weird to me, because that seems like that's too heavy to do that, but they must have just really wet that surface down to make that happen. It looks cool. I've never seen that happen before in a movie before. It's a real tank, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, it can go 30 miles an hour. Now, and it did have the rubber treads on it, so it didn't tear up the streets of St. Petersburg.
Okay, yeah, maybe that slides. That would explain why I was sliding a bit. So I imagine if you watered down the streets and put that thing in there, and it was probably stripped down a bit to not have ammunition in it and stuff. So maybe the weight was cut.
No, all the armor and stuff on it was a prop.
Okay,
The
okay, then that explains it a
action
lot more.
armor. Yeah,
Okay.
that was real. Um,
Um,
but like I said, this is one of the things, like you see this in a movie. It's like, well, one of us has actually driven a tank, so I have no idea.
I like basically parked a tank, so I didn't really get it up to speed or anything like that.
Well, and you were doing an Abrams too, so
Yeah,
that's like a much better tank than a T-55.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, this is a cool chase scene, and
Yeah,
I don't think any other scene or movie has done this since.
no, no, no. Well, you
Like,
can't film in Russia like this anymore.
yeah. I mean, there's been crazy chase scenes and flying through buildings in like the Fast and Furious franchise, but never like take a tank and just run it through walls and buildings and shit like that. Because I think they have to use a miniature for some of the stuff, but otherwise, like they're just really doing that, and it looks cool.
Oh yeah.
um, let's see here. Yeah, I'm trying to remember other details. Yeah, this happens. There's like a crazy thing where like he like flies through like a statue, then like the horse statue is like on top of the tank, then the statue gets knocked off by some like crosswalkway, and then it falls on some police cars, and the police cars ram in the back of the tank, and then he's just kind of like, huh, and then he like takes off the tank, and he's just plowing through archways and buildings just to chase after the car. So yeah, it's a cool scene, and like something also. This is another scene where when you do like a retrospective on Bond, like this is one of those scenes that are gonna pop up because it's just a big ridiculous thing.
Yeah, it's half cool and half stupid at the
Yeah.
same time. It's like, if this really happened, this would be amazing. But I did like, because he was driving, and like one of the police cars got in front of him or swerved in his way, and he just crushed it. But they immediately show both the guys getting out of the front of the police
Yeah.
car, because I was thinking like, oh God, did he just run those guys over and kill them? That's like, no, that's not James Bond.
um, although I mean, I don't know, like for the Abrams, the startup sequence kind of took a bit. Where here he just kind of hops in and goes. But I will tell you, generally, because it would hinder things. But generally, military vehicles don't have keys.
They just start button.
Yeah. So, yeah, military equipment, not that hard to steal, technically.
Oh, I've seen these YouTube channels where people bought like actual Humvees, and not really those, because those are a real nightmare to keep running, but the Oshkoshes, the hauling vehicles,
Yeah.
and they have to like build stuff so it has key starting, because
Yeah.
they're just driving around Wisconsin like, oh wait a minute, anyone can just jump in this thing and start it. I gotta figure out how to make a key thing. And then you find out, oh, military vehicles have weird grounding protocols and stuff. So it's like you can't just hook in like civilian ignition systems. So you got to find a kit and talk to two guys who like, yeah, I did this. And because they're buying these Oshkoshes to like build like apocalypse RVs or whatever. And then they find out like, oh, these things are a nightmare to own and maintain, and they use gas like crazy, and it requires a team of people to repair them constantly. It's like, yeah, it was just made so a bunch of contractors could make money. It wasn't made because it was the best idea or the most efficient thing. It just looks cool. But yeah.
But also there's a bit where like, because Oramov takes Natalia to the armored train where
Yes.
Zinnia's waiting, and Bond kind of like sneaks around in the tank where I'm like, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, the tank, like he's looking around like, there they are. Here we go in our tank that no one can hear all of a sudden. It wouldn't be like,
But that happens multiple times in this movie. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's a Bond movie, so there's a lot of times where things come up out of nowhere that there's no way they could come up out of nowhere.
Yeah. The tank suddenly appears on like a light car bridge. It's like, well, that bridge would just actually collapse. That. Yeah, this is another cool thing in this movie, an iconic scene where Trevelyan has this train. They called it like it's Soviet nuclear missile train or whatever, but really it looks like oh, he has a combine train from Half-Life 2, and which is actually the guys who made Half-Life modeled it after the looks of this train.
Okay.
So that's where this come from. Because it's like, oh, this was the secret trains that they used to use to move nuclear weapons around the Russia where we couldn't find them. When it obviously looks like something, there would be nothing secret or subtle about this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this thing obviously, this is a death train. It's black. It's got a red star on it. Means there's something evil going on.
Yeah.
The real trains that did that were called the R-23 Molodettes. Molodette is a French word, or I'm sorry, is a Russian word that means fine fellow. And it transported the missiles called the SS-24 Scalpel, is what NATO called them. They were intermediate range to long range missiles, mainly that would hit our bases in Russia. And they moved them around on trains in Russia, but they were disguised to look like grain trains, passenger trains, stuff like that. They weren't all painted black and looking sinister, which would have made them immediately like, this is the death train. So, by the way, it was a terrible failure. The missiles rocked apart inside them, maintained because they weighed so much. And but it was, the Russians always tried to hide missiles and move them around. They still do to this day. This model I'm working on is based on that concept. This is a Russian road mobile missile launcher. So it's about 1/4 done.
I was like, they have a bunch of stuff on it, so it almost looks like they put a body kit on it, like like when they put body kits on cars from the 80s and they make them look way cooler. That's kind of what this thing's going on. It's like it's got low to the ground, train.
Ground effects on a train. Yeah, it was actually that part of the movie was filmed in the UK. That's a British train where they just put a wooden body on it and painted it over. It was actually 2 trains. There was a power locomotive in the front and the back, and then they had the luxury cars in the middle. And that was it was a horrible heat trap because it had this wood body on it and it couldn't vent heat properly. So it was very limited how they could film with it. So they had to get those scenes in quick.
It doesn't last long, so it makes sense.
Yeah, it was kind of like the guy who made his own. Remember that guy who made his own killdozer and was going to blow up the town? It's like what ultimately stopped it was, well, one, he got caught he fell through the floor, but the second thing was he put so much of his homemade composite armor on it that it just overheated. So yeah, that's always the problem with stuff that looks cool. It's like, oh, it's so smooth and low to the ground. And it's like, why do the real trains look like shit? It's like, well, because they're mechanical devices that have to suck in air and expel heat and exhaust. They'd make them look smooth and cool if they just had like a nuclear reactor in them, but that doesn't work very well.
Ourumov brings Natalia to Alec. Alec creeps on Natalia just like kind of out of nowhere. He forces himself onto her. It's like, we share everything. It's like which I guess if you want to make a character immediately hateable, like that's a way to do it. So, because really, like, you get Alec in the opening scene, and now you're like hour 10 into the movie, and here he is again. So you kind of need to do things quick with this character.
Yeah.
Bond parks the tank on the train tracks, which again they just somehow he comes out of nowhere and gets ahead of the train.
I'd like to see how he got there. I'd like to see the train running at a full clip down the train track. That would be cool and wildly destructive.
Al calls on the conductor to like ram the tank. Bond fires the cannon at the train and then hops out.
And then shows up 1,000 yards away 10 seconds later. It's like, wow, this guy can really run.
Yeah, man, that's 0 to 40 in dress shoes.
I mean, he's doing the Tom Cruise run in real life.
The train comes to a halt. Bond gets a drop on Alec and Zinnia. Ourumov.
Well, the train drives through the tank and is destroyed.
Yeah, it like splits it in half.
It's a cool scene.
But
and everyone in the train is like this, like holding on, and they all basically get knocked out, which is like, oh, finally something realistic happened in this movie. When a train goes from 100 to 0 in 5 feet, it's like, yeah, you're going to get knocked out. That inertia is going somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure because I don't know, maybe, but because I guess the train car, I'm not sure. It's because there's a height thing too. Because I always was like, why don't buses have seat belts on them? And I guess because most cars, like if you have, I guess because a bus, where an accident would happen because you sit above it, like the inertia isn't transferred through you, and so that's why they don't have to do it.
Yeah, it's transferred through the lower frame.
Yeah.
And also, if you hit something in a bus that weighs 8 to 15,000 pounds hard enough to need to restrain you, you're dead anyway. Because that bus is getting hit by a lot more force than any seatbelt could mitigate. But and also because the school districts don't want to pay for them because they hate your kids.
So Bond gets a drop on Alex and Zinnia. Oromov comes in with a gun to Natalia's head, but Bond negotiates with Oromov for a moment. Where he's like, "He's just gonna betray you," and he's like, "Oh, is that true?" And then basically Alec kind of dares Bond. Is like, "No, you always try to save the girl." And he's like, "She means nothing to me." But here Bond shoots Oromov dead, and then tries to go back and shoot Zinnia and Alec, but they escape. So it's showing like, oh, he does have a heart. I don't know.
I like how he can shoot someone with like an AK-47 that he just picked up who's using someone else's cover and do like a headshot. It's like, you've never fired that gun before. That's amazing. And it's an AK-47, notoriously inaccurate weapons.
And in a closed armored train, like nobody would be able to hear after that.
Are you okay? What? Are you okay? Everyone would be talking like the David Lynch FBI character. What is there a bomb on here? What?
Then there's a computer on board. Natalia starts hacking Boris using his spike or something like it. Like, you know, they never said like they just introduced the idea of the spike, and then suddenly everybody has the spike. I don't know.
Because James Bond could type "send spike." Aha, we got him. It's like he doesn't even know how a computer works. But cool.
And they get locked in the train. There's explosions on board, and like he says something like I'll give you the same 6 minutes you gave me, and then that's when Bond's like, "What's that mean?" It's like, we have 3 minutes to get out of here. And then in the meantime, Bond he says like it's an inch thick armor, so he'll never get out. So Bond has his watch laser, so he's like cutting a hole in the ground, but
looking right at the laser, burning his retinas out.
And then Natalia's like trying to trace where Boris is. Natalia figures Boris is somewhere in Cuba, which I thought was like, wait, shouldn't they have to figure out that it's in South America because that's where the real satellite dish is? And it's like,
Arecibo, yeah.
But that's the real one. But no, here it's Cuba. But so they get to know it's Cuba. They escape just before the train blows up, and then they kind of Natalia and Bond share a kiss for really no reason other than that's like, well, we got to move on and we got to have them fall in love. So
we didn't die. Who's up for sex? How many bodies are we leaving our wake? Let's get it on.
Does that burning train have munitions? Should we be having sex in front of it? Yeah. So that'd be the end of Act 2. So we have Act 3. Here Bond is in his BMW with Natalia in the Caribbean or whatever, Caribbean.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
And so yeah, this is basically a car commercial for the BMW because it never gets used anywhere else in the movie. They did use BMWs in the other films more. Like, they have a cool scene in Tomorrow Never Dies where he basically, like, remotely controls the BMW from the back seat, so that's kind of a neat chase scene. But, yeah, this was a kind of a changeover from the Aston Martins to BMWs for the moment, but they went back to Aston Martins. Actually, I think, like, Bond has, like, a Ford Manello or something? Some European Ford Focus or Fusion in, like, Casino Royale.
Oh, Mondeo? Yeah, I think he does for a minute. Yeah. Because remember, Ford owned Aston Martin then.
Yeah.
So that was, but yeah, so like Ford basically controlled like the product placement. It's like, now we want him to drive a Mondeo, which like here it's a Fusion. There, that's like actually a nice, like that's a big car to drive over there. Here it's like a kind of what we used to call it. We don't even have cars anymore, but mid-size economy car. But there, it's like that's a big car.
Prop plane lands just in front of him, like the plane just shows up out of nowhere. It's Wade. He shows up with some gadgets from Q. They need to sneak into Cuba to look for a giant satellite dish. We have beach time with
Which
Bond
they
and
say that the CIA guy says we never found it. We've never seen it on radar. We don't know where this
yeah,
installation
we
is.
found a satellite dish the size of a football field.
Yeah.
um, yeah, we cut time beach time with Bond and Natalia. Was they don't say how much time it's been, but they basically make it seem like it's been months later, and like they've been having sex. They're about to get married.
Yeah.
um,
James, we're gonna have a baby again.
uh, you kind of have Bond on the beach at night, kind of being sullen, and this is supposed to be like Bond lamenting, like having to kill a former friend, but like the scene doesn't really work. It's like, well, he was just about to shoot him in the last scene. Like he has no problem killing this guy. He might have a feeling after he's dead, but you know he's not gonna balk at killing him though. So, and we have some bedtime with Bond. Which I think there's some jokes in here where he's like, "Did you mean that when you said you mean nothing to me?" And it's like, yeah, it's like, how else was this going to work or something? But he's being playful about it. Then we cut to they fly the prop plane into Cuba. They're kind of flying just above a mountain range looking for a satellite. They don't see one, not a satellite dish. And then a missile just comes out of a lake out of nowhere and causes the plane to crash on the shore of the lake. They escape the plane and like pass out in a clearing, and then they wake up to a helicopter where Zinnia rappels down to fight Bond. She kind of rappels down in a weird way where it's like just like legs akimbo. like,
Yeah.
like, wee. I mean, her thing is like killing people with her thighs, you know, just aiming with that. So she's crushing Bond with her thighs. Bond ends up like she has like a rifle strapped to her back, and he kind of grabs that and shoots the helicopter down, which like crashes and ends up like pulling like Zinnia like into a tree and crushing her to death against the tree.
Yeah, but not in a gory way, like not
No.
where she's ripped apart, which would actually what would happen.
Yeah.
She's like the brake for the helicopter crashing into the ground, and the tree is like a Y, like a person's legs. So she's being like pulled into it, kind of, and killed. I mean, it's just, blood doesn't gush out of her or anything.
No,
It's
she just, you know,
she's dead, and she looks like it's like a Jesus Christ pose in the
yeah,
tree.
she's like weirdly crucified.
And then Bond's like, she always did like a good squeeze. I always love those lines. If I ever see someone die horribly, I'm always like, I gotta have a Bond line preloaded. Like if someone finally gets mangled at work from stuff falling, it's like, what a crushing shock. You know, I want to say something like that, but I know it's like, well, he gets fired automatically because he's a weirdo.
I'm trying to remember her face when she dies, because I figured like her character probably should die with a smile. It's like, finally, my sadism is complete. I die, but I think she just kind of croaks dead or whatever. So, then the satellite dish raises from the lake, which again, this is really cool, but like an impossibility. I'm thinking of, you know, what's the infrastructure it would take to build a satellite dish under a lake and hide all the parts being transported here. But anyways, it's just a cool Bond villain thing. But yeah, it's like he's running it, so I kind of this had to have been like Russian controlled or whatever. There's also no Cubans in this facility whatsoever.
Yeah.
Alex preps the GoldenEye. They're going to launch. They're going to like hold. Well, I was going to say hold London hostage for money or revenge, but it's actually just like they're going. Boris has a program to rob the London bank or the Bank of London, and then they're just going to ruin all of like London's infrastructure so it can't be traced to them or whatever. It's like,
yeah.
oh, okay, so they do the Die Hard thing here, where it's like it's instead of like making it like a revenge or terrorism, it's just a robbery. So then it's funner.
And they actually do the Die Hard dialogue in the end. You know, this means you're just a common thief, right? He doesn't come back and say, I'm an exceptional thief. But you know. By the way, that actor auditioned for the bad guy in this. What's his name? He died not too long ago.
The Hans Gruber guy?
Yeah, what was his name? I just have
Alan
him in my
Rickman.
Alan Rickman, yes.
Okay.
Because Sean Bean, Ralph Fiennes, and Sean Bean also auditioned to play James Bond in this movie.
Huh. Bond or the villain?
Bond.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Ralph Fiennes would have been an interesting James Bond.
The quiet James Bond.
The pondering James Bond.
James Ponder. We cut to Bond and Natalia. They're like at the edge of the dish as it comes out, because like as the dish comes up, basically the lake disappears. Some bad guys shoot at them, and they end up like sliding down the dish to like an access panel. Bond takes on the military guys inside the facility, but it's just like a distraction. Which here, this is kind of reminiscent of like the like end fight in Total Recall.
Yeah.
Because he has some devices, he puts it around. There's like some circle cylinders they're fighting around, but he doesn't do that. He just kind of gives up, and he puts some bombs up and he surrenders to them. But the main thing is Natalia's in the background, trying to stop the GoldenEye. So yeah, there's like some of the whatever these cylinders are, they apparently have gas in it or whatever, and so he puts the bombs on it. So he wants to blow that stuff up. Alex speaks with Bond, and he like looks over Bond's gadgets. And he's like, "Oh, I remember this because they even have the same watch, but like his stuff has new gadgets to it." Here he hits a thing and it disarms the bombs he planted, which I don't know if like Alec knew to do that or if it's just coincidental.
I'm assuming there was something he could see on the watch that meant they were connected to the timer, because those were the same type of bombs from the that was the opening of the movie.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense then. So yeah, this is where they explain that Boris is going to rob the Bank of London and use the GoldenEye to cover the tracks. Where he mentions like it'll be a worldwide financial meltdown.
So these electronic money transfers you're doing are going to do what in that instance? But
Yeah, no, you just stole money that's now worthless.
do you physically have the money? Because otherwise,
for some reason, Boris is happy to see Natalia, and then she just runs up and tackles him.
Boris seems like he's really not in contact with what the shape he makes of the world somehow.
And then,
shock something.
And Boris gets a hold of the bomb pen and starts using it as like a fidget clicker.
Yeah, it's a fidget spinner.
So, but only Bond knows it. Only knows to be afraid of it being a bomb, which is kind of interesting because nobody else knows what's going on. Natalia changed like the satellite coordinates and access code. Bond knows to knock the pin away, and it ends up landing in the same thing he had the bombs on. So he gets that blows up. So he wanted to do that anyway. So Bond and Natalia use this to escape and take an elevator away. Bond's like running to the satellite receiver because there's like the satellite's on the ground, and then there's like this like thing that collects all the data suspended in the air, and that's what the dish reflects all to. So I think that's the receiver. That's what I call it, but it's like huge.
Yeah.
Like on a small satellite dish, it's just that little cone thing that's like that's on the stem of the thing that sticks out from the dish. But here it's a whole suspended building. And did they shoot this at the one in South Africa, or did they just model it?
The one in Puerto Rico? Yeah.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is shot after. Yeah, the rising up from the water and all that, like that was obviously
that was a model, yeah.
But that was cool. I liked it, the model, because when they go from that model to like the actual one they're filming at, like the scale seems the same. So they did a good job with that.
Yeah.
Like it was actually kind of cool.
Yeah. What was I gonna say? But yeah, I didn't get the. I didn't get the answer. Did they film at that satellite?
Yes, they did film at Arecibo. Yeah.
Yeah, which that place was that like in 2020 where that got destroyed finally.
I remember it was like the biggest telescope or what was it called? Parabolic satellite transmission thing or whatever in the world until 2016. The Chinese built a bigger one, And then, yeah, one of the hurricanes, I think, did damage to it. And they really weren't getting enough business there to keep it open. So I think it did finally get, yeah, they just like kind
Yeah,
of
I think they
abandoned.
shut it down, and then like it fell apart eventually, or a piece of it, and then they just completely got rid of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks cool, and it's like this is for science, and that's a bad thing, but there's actually way more efficient ways to do that.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason we didn't like build another one. It's like, because they always point out, it's like, well, the Chinese have the biggest one. It's like, yeah, to do the best astronomy from 20 years ago, they got us. It's
Well, they have
Chinese.
like I forget what they call it. It's called like a variable array satellite dish. It's like you don't need one giant one. You can just have smaller ones spread up
Yeah.
farther apart, and it'll do the same thing. It'll actually be more efficient and cover a wider area. So that's why you don't need one giant one like that.
And also, we have like that space telescope we just put
Yeah.
up that costs like $20 billion, and already like seen the face of God or whatever. It's like, well, I guess we're gonna win that one. So
But Heroes featured in like this and in Contact, and it was always a cool thing. So
no, it looks cool, but it's like,
and
yeah, it's
and I think they used stock footage of it in like X-Files and stuff like that. I think it was in an
yep.
episode of that. So yeah, it was showed up in a lot of things I liked. Where we get so Bond's running to the satellite receiver and like has a firefight with Alec along the way. So he's like Alec's like taking like a what do you call it? No, like suspend. What's those trolley things? Like like you have at like a ski resort. What's that thing called?
oh, the lifts, like the yeah, what are those called? I know what you're talking about. Ski lifts, not ski lifts.
Yeah, it's kind of like a train car lift thing. And it's getting
It's like a
carried.
maintenance thing, yeah.
And then Bond's like kind of like running on a ladder to it, so they're in the same place. And they're just having a shootout in between. Boris, we cut to Boris breaks Natalia's access code, and he like repositions the receiver, but Bond like shoves just a metal piece into like the ratcheting mechanism to break it. Bond has a fist fight with Alex, which I think like Alec like jumps away and Bond kind of shoots him as he like falls through a hatch or something like that, and then you see blood later on. It's like, oh, I got him, but then Alec gets the drop on Bond, and then Alec gets a gun somewhere, somebody's gun. I think it's just his gun, and then Bond is able to like kick open like this emergency ladder hatch below, and it's like it's like 5 extended ladders on top of each other, and he goes down with it, which I like when it finally arrests and he stopped, like Bond makes a like that hurt noise as he suddenly stops and he's only holding on with his arms. It's like, yeah, he just broke all the ligaments in your arm.
Yeah. Ow.
And let's see here. Now they're fighting over like a long drop down to the satellite dish because it's hanging like like 30 feet over it or something. Or here it seems like 100 feet. Also, Alec calls in a gunship, but as the gunship shows up, Natalia's holding the pilot, like a gun to the pilot's head, so that's not going to work out for Alec. Bond knocks Alec off the ladder, but like grabs his foot just before he falls to his death. And then here Alec looks at him and he goes like, "For England, James?" And he goes, "No, for me." And he just drops him. Yeah. Which I wrote. Then he lets Alex fall to his death, but like Alex is technically still alive. Like he's breathing, he's conscious.
Yeah, I mean, they show him hitting.
Yeah.
So he didn't like, his skeleton didn't shoot out of his body as he smashed into the ground. So it's like, oh, there's a reason they showed him hit. So there must be like something else going to happen.
We cut to the GoldenEye satellite burns in the atmosphere, so that's done. I think we cut to like also Boris screams like no,
and he's grabbing the computer and he's like shaking it.
We cut to Bond jumps to a helicopter just as the receiver station catches fire, blows up, and then its burning remains fall onto a screaming Alec. So yeah. Now he's dead. And we cut back to Boris because like as basically everybody inside the building dies from explosion, he stands up and it's like, and he does because this is a repeated thing where he goes like, "I am invincible," And then for no reason, not explained, it's just a movie thing, especially a very Terminator 2 thing. He's hit with exploding cryo tanks. That leaves him frozen to death, presumably. So
It could come back, but usually you don't after that.
Which I guess you could make an excuse. It's like, oh, there's a lot of computer banks and stuff in here. We got to keep these computers cool, but otherwise, it just came out of nowhere. And he was helping the bad guys, so I guess he deserves to die. But
Yeah.
and he was responsible for a bunch of people's deaths. So sold out his coworkers. Then Bond and Natalia hop off the helicopter, which that guy just flies away.
Yeah.
Last bad guy to survive. And then they just start making out. And then Wade shows up out of nowhere, and then a bunch of Marines and a helicopter pop out of nowhere. This is where 3 helicopters pop up with no sound. It's like, that wouldn't happen at all.
Well, helicopters. And all the Marines are like on the ground, like they're covered in grass, and they just pop up like snipers or something. Like,
yeah. Why is your medic in camouflage? So we had to do this cool thing. Like, you sent him through sniper school just to do this thing? It's like, yeah. Or are you all snipers? Is this just a badly equipped Team Fortress team where everybody's snipers and nobody wins?
these guys are hell at a distance.
They talked to Wade for a bit, who just kind of makes some jokes, and it's like, back to Guantanamo, debrief, and so they, because he was about to watch them have sex, but he decides to interrupt and make sure, like, hey,
in the real world, they would have all been just sitting there. It's like, don't move, don't move. He's going for it. He's going for it. Oh my God, this is happening.
So they take off in the helicopters, and that's the end of the movie. Which I'm guessing I can't even remember, but did they just bring back the Tina Turner GoldenEye theme for the end of the movie?
I think so. It was more of a faster version of it.
Okay.
An upbeat version.
So yeah, this is one of the best Bond movies, especially the best Brosnan Bond movie. Really set it off on a good foot for enough to make 3 more movies that were kind of mediocre. So
yeah.
What else was? Well, I guess we're sending a probe into space. They're sending a GoldenEye probe into space.
Yeah.
Containing the supercut of scenes for the imperfect collection that is the Verhoeven Effect. Nathan, what scene would you send into space from GoldenEye?
It would have, if I just had to pick a scene, it would be in the Garden of Statues when Janus is revealed to be 006, because it kind of sets the tone for the whole movie, which is like there's going to be surprises and twists, and no one's going to know who's who and what they're doing, and a satellite will appear from under the water. We will displace billions of gallons of water in minutes, nay, seconds. So that is going to be the world of GoldenEye and the fantastical world of Soviet super tech.
In a dilapidated country.
Yeah, second world infrastructure. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's like Russia's really scary. It's like only because of the people that inhabit it. Not and it's sad too, because I've met more than my fair share of Russians. You run into a lot of them in the auto industry. I've never met any that are dumb. I haven't met too many that are moral either. It's kind of it's like, wow, is there no God in your world? Or what? Explain your God to me. What motivates you?
Would God help? Because otherwise I need to get this thing done.
Yeah. What is what's the problem? I don't know. It's different though. Like I said, I'm just, like they said in the Lord of the Rings, a child of the kindly West. I don't understand these places or the people that inhabit them. It doesn't seem to be working though. If happiness is, if misery is a metric, then it's working great.
I guess I have to, well, I don't even have to address this. I just want to say something. I think the last few movies, like Driving Miss Daisy has come up, and I keep like not confusing it. For some reason, I kept saying Samuel L. Jackson was in that, and it's not Samuel L. Jackson. That was Morgan Freeman. And it's not like I just confused two black guys. It's because for some reason, which I haven't seen Driving Miss Daisy since it came out when I was 5. I remember it as Samuel L. Jackson in comically bad old man makeup.
That's an amazing Driving Miss Daisy. Bitch, get in this motherfucking car. We gotta go.
And like, I have no like defense other than like Samuel L. Jackson's been in really famous driving scenes, you know, especially from Pulp Fiction. And also, one of my favorite ones of his was in Loaded Weapon 1. Do you remember that movie, Nathan?
Oh yeah. That's...
Well, it's him and Emilio Estevez are in the car, and it's a spoof movie, and like Samuel L. Jackson goes like, "Hold on, I think we're being followed," and they just cut to wide, and there's just two guys in the back seat with like stockings on and holding crowbars, and there's like, "Play it cool, I'm gonna lose him," and then like. He kind of talks out the side of his mouth, and Emilio Estevez like, "Oh yeah, what did you think of the Stallone retrospective at the like whatever?" And then he just does a 180 with the station wagon, and they cut back, and the guys are gone from the seat. It's a great stupid joke from a movie that people really don't remember, but it's really a great spoof movie that seems to kind of that people don't respect enough.
Yeah, because it's like the kind of comedy. Sometimes I like that kind of comedy because I like Airplane. It's one of my favorite movies. My favorite comedy probably is the original Airplane. And I like the Police Squad movies. The TV shows were good too, but the movies were really over the top crazy. And this was very much in the vein of like Police Squad.
Yeah.
But for some reason, yeah, it's not. No one talks about it. And it's like that's actually a funny movie. I mean, it's not like as good as like the Police Squad movies, but it is pretty good.
But yeah, for a spoof movie, especially at that time where they were putting them out quite a bit, it was one of the higher quality ones. And
yeah,
now you look at the cast, it's like, wow, what an amazing cast.
How'd they get all these people? Why did Emilio Estevez quit acting?
He did that RFK movie, and follow the money.
Yeah. Nope. You've been warned.
So if you like what you heard, and how couldn't you? You can find us at verhoeveneffect.com or podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/Verhoeven-Effect. Whatever.
Yeah, do that, please. I'll give you $5.
I don't know, Nathan, look, put Verhoeven Effect in Google. Are we the first thing that comes up? God, I hope so. Yeah, I haven't done any SEO, but we can find out.
Yes, Verhoeven Effect on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify.
Okay.
Verhoeven Effect Amazon
Music.
Audible. Okay, cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's on Amazon, yeah, so.
Urban Dictionary. Verhoeven Effect, a tendency of poor attempts at satire to backfire, inadvertently creating characters and symbols which people, often including the targets of the satirical work, find genuinely relatable or admirable. So
I did not put that definition in. I looked at that entry. We came up with our definition before that entry, so maybe we should make a new entry for that. For us.
Oh, here's cease and desist notice for podcasters. Yeah, here we've been told to stop making this podcast. Yeah, it's on here.
You can rate us. You can rate our podcast on whatever platform of your choice. You can rate us whatever you want. Remember, the algorithm only listens to the highest rating. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. We have listener support at verhoeveneffect.com, or you can support us at a monthly stipend, either 99 cents, 49, or $9.99. You can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect. You can find us at Facebook, Verhoeven Effect. You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory and watch both this and that show live and unedited. We also have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Colin.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye.